PXG has had a meteoric rise in the golf industry, and in a very short period of time, they have become one of the major players on the manufacturing side of the business. They've done this like so many great companies of the past in our country, and that is by revolutionizing their industry. The first part of that comes by having a phenomenal product. You can't do it without it. But the second part comes in a way the product is introduced to and brought to the masses, and in this instance, it's the golfing public. Nobody ever believed that golfers would pay what they do for a set of PXGs, but they changed the industry forever, and with that, they continue to see amazing growth. As we find out in today's show, PXG's entire culture revolves around an amazing experience. From the way their club techs go out of their way to accommodate anybody looking to hit their clubs or get fit, to the development of retail stores around the country, plus a number of other things in between. As a territory manager in this part of the country, I discussed these things with my guest today in our show. Not only was he one of the early employees of the company, but he has also risen within the company and helped them grow through his ability to ensure the mantra is adhered to, and that each person that has an interest in PXG is given the same great experience and has passed that on to all those that he now leads as they are expanding into new areas and the company continues to grow. I often say in the intros that this is a special show, and that is very true, as many of the guests on the show are longtime friends, world-class experts, or highly successful. But today's show is even more special because if you didn't pay close attention to his name in the title, he is my brother, Chedo Popovich. Even though I've had a front row seat to his entire career in and around the golf business, from starting out as caddies at the local country club to his moving to Hilton Head shortly after I did and working at local clubs, his rise within the club fitting and tech world, where he was able to work with and meet so many exceptional people in other parts of the business that have had a tremendous impact on his career and development. It never hurts to have unprecedented networking. I also knew he was good at what he did because the proof was in the pudding, where others would speak to his ability to help them with their equipment and their games, but I never realized how good he had become in his current position of territory manager. He was fortunate enough to get on with them in the early stages of their growth and has risen as the company has as well. In today's show, he gives an inside look at what the day in the life of manufacturer's rep is like, how PXG has been able to distinguish themselves by focusing almost completely on the customer experience, and how he has helped grow that business in his territory. Even though we live about 100 yards from one another and still get together regularly for dinners or to talk golf, I wasn't aware of how far he's come. He's become a leader. He's developed a tremendous amount of trust with those he manages and has helped make PXG into an industry leader. I know I always say give a big welcome for today's guest, but today I'd like to ask you to make that welcome even bigger as you sit back, relax, and welcome PXG Territory Manager and my brother, Chedo Popovich. What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Golf 360 podcast. I'm the host, Pete Popovich. So you may be asking yourself, what is Golf 360? And Golf 360 is a show that was designed to introduce you to people associated with the game of golf to help you improve not only at your game, but also your life. Almost all of our guests are from within the industry in some way, shape, or form, but some of the guests we have are from outside the industry, and it mainly revolves around the business world with a few others scattered in here and there. Now, all of the guests that we have a few things in common. One, they all were highly successful and accomplished in their field. Two, each has something to pass along that will help you in your game and your life. And three, they were all more than willing to give back by passing along the things that they use to help them in their career, and even some of the mistakes that they made so that others don't make them in their journey. So I hope you find listening to them as enjoyable as I did interviewing them, and that each and every one of you benefits from the information that they so willingly and graciously pass along. Hey everybody, I want to give a big shout out to a new sponsor of the Golf 360 podcast, and that's Affinity Wealth Management Group. We all work exceptionally hard for our money, and none of us can afford to let that fall into the dark abyss of the big box financial service firms and their jack of all trades and master of none mantra, which basically means you become a number within a cookie cutter model that's also often accompanied by massive fees. Your future deserves more than average returns and little attention. At Affinity Wealth Management, they ensure that your financial goals receive highly individualized, tailored attention from experts, not just advisors, who are in the industry to be great and not average. As a client of Affinity Wealth, you receive a customized solution to your customized life, keeping in mind your family's financial situation, values, and risk tolerance. Call Affinity Wealth today for a no-cost consultation with one of their experts at 724-754-8200. Again, that's 724-754-8200. Or you can also check them out on the web at www.affinitywealthmg.com. That's AFFINITYWEALTHMG.com. This podcast is brought to you in part by Just Thrive Probiotic. You may be surprised to learn that your digestive system is the key to creating and maintaining the quality of your physical, mental, and emotional health, and it's one of the body's most essential systems. That's why the majority of nutritionists today highly recommend probiotics as an indispensable nutritional supplement. As a discriminating consumer, you've probably been searching for a probiotic that is proven, potent, and effective, and you found it. Just Thrive is your best choice for maintaining a healthy lifestyle. Just Thrive Probiotic captures the power of hundreds of thousands of years of nature's design with a specialized Bacillus strain formulation that guarantees survivability through the stomach and upper digestive system. Supports optimum gut health, digestive health, immune health, and delivers antioxidants. Great for adults, kids, and the whole family. Use promo code GOLF360 at www.thriveprobiotic.com for 10% off your order. All right, we're live, rocking and rolling. Baby bro on the show. About time we got it done.
Yeah, finally.
A lot of friends and family been wondering when this was going to happen. In fact, we live 100 yards from each other. But as everyone knows in today's world, it's so crazy. And you got a 18-month-old now. Life's changed for you more so than it has for me. But it's given us some time to plan this out and watch your business develop and so on. So we got a lot to talk about. I hope everybody, obviously family and friends are going to like this, but I think a lot of people that find PXG very intriguing are going to want to hear some of the things that they do. And since you've been with them for so long, this will be fun.
Absolutely.
Let's just jump into PXG since that's what probably a lot of people are going to be so curious about. And if you can talk to how they went from almost anonymity to a major player in such a short period of time.
I think part of it when they came out was, what are these expensive golf clubs? What makes them so expensive? Why would we buy them? And I think I remember when I told you I was taking a job, I was sort of apprehensive because I was like, who's going to pay $350 for an iron? And almost 4 years later, here I am, and we're talking about it. And the product's unbelievable. It when I first started testing, and because that's all I did for almost 15 years was test product fit from a feel standpoint, from materials they were using. No other manufacturer was using materials like that because it cost too much to produce.
What type of material?
S25 carbon, super soft. We were injection molding our heads with thermoplastic elastomer. So the feel coming off that, you couldn't, I mean, they were so soft, no one else could replicate it.
Yeah, the injection molding is extremely expensive.
It's extremely expensive. You know, everyone asked what the screws did, and, you know, those were for weighting the golf clubs. So we could hit swing weights other companies couldn't. So if Pete comes in and needs to be an inch long but says, I don't want D6, I want D3, we can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was more, we wanted to provide an experience. So being that new, we would go to a club and pros would be like, okay, you know, these feel pretty good. You know, I don't know if Joe Smith is going to spend $6,000 for a set of golf clubs. Lo and behold, Joe Smith did spend $6,000 for a set of golf clubs for his club here, for his club in Atlanta, and it just sort of skyrocketed.
So it kind of went viral.
Went viral. What we found out was, when I started, the guy who I worked under, I learned very quick he didn't have a golf background. He was just a salesman. Mm-hmm. And he was a good salesman, but didn't know how to fit. So my goal that first year when I started with PXG was, I want to climb the ladder here, because I think I was employee 101, and that's what intrigued me about PXG. Being with Titleist for as long as I was and fitting, they have a culture there where they're going to promote everything from within, and an outside fitter trying to get in, get in line. And it just got to the point where, okay, here's this new brand. You're starting to see it more and more, and it's taken off, and it's like, screw it, let's go.
Take the chance.
Take the chance and see where it goes. Because if I didn't like it after a year, I could find a job down here. I can find another job with an equipment manufacturer. And being down here 20 years, you being down here longer, we knew enough people where if it didn't work after a year, it's like, okay.
From the company standpoint, was there much, not fear, but hope, and maybe not? They created the model that it was going to be a high end, but was there much? Did they feel like they were assuming some risk in going after, or basically creating a whole new level stratosphere?
They created a whole new market.
Right. Was there any apprehension? There couldn't have been apprehension. They wouldn't have invested so much in it.
The first mobile fitting van, the proof of concept was Texas. Mm-hmm. And I think the guy in Texas did $600,000 in 5 months.
Gross sales?
And it's like, okay, this is working. The next guy.
That was like a model.
That was the model. If that model worked out, okay, let's start putting vans everywhere. And, they started growing and growing and growing. And when I came on, I started in, I think, late April of 17. And it was hard from the aspect of, okay, you got to get the brand out there. And, we targeted high-end clubs. So down here it was Chichesse Creek, Palmetto Bluff, Colleton River. Then you got into Charleston, Kiowa, Country Club of Charleston, Bulls Bay. And then you got into the whole other animal of Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And so most of my first 18 months was spent in Atlanta. It was building up clubs around here, which wasn't hard because I knew everyone. Mm-hmm. Charleston, I knew everyone. Savannah, I knew everyone. Sea Island, I knew everyone. So the Atlanta market was crazy because prior to that, I never spent a lot of time in Atlanta. And it's just like, where is all this money? You had 25-year-old guys dropping $4,000. I'm like, how the hell? Where are you getting this money? And after about the first 9 months, the guy who was above me quit. And so I took over the whole territory of South Carolina and Georgia. And that year I grew 91%. And in 20 of 18, I was Region of the Year. And I remember at dinner sitting with Bob Parsons, he's staring at me and he's like, how the hell did you grow 90%? He goes, you went from no one, and then next thing you know, you're 90% growth. You sold over $1.1 million out of your van. How'd you do it? It was just work. Now, it was taxing. I think I put 78,000 miles on the van that year.
From April?
No, from in 2018. So from January of 2018 to December of 2018, 78,000 miles.
Yeah, that's some serious driving.
I had over 1 million Hilton points. If that says anything.
For anyone out there that's in the rep or the salesperson world, 1 million miles is pretty impressive.
Yeah, 1 million points, and but it was all worth it. I'd do it again. I'd absolutely do it again. And the people I've met, the connections. I mean, a lot of these customers I have, 2 of my best customers are actually really good friends now. One in Atlanta, Brian Kelleher, owns an electric company. We become great friends. Sean Kent, who's a lawyer in Charleston, great friend. And I mean, Sean's helped me out of some traffic violations. along the way.
Yeah,
But
you're bound to get one when you're driving 78,000 miles.
so it was hard. It was a lot of time away from home, but at the same time, the gratification from growing that much and being part of something new. And it was acknowledged, and I was challenged to make the Atlanta market $1 million, and I did it.
The what a lot of people don't get, I had firsthand knowledge since you're my brother, was and you saw me doing something similar when I was chasing the PGA
Sure.
Tour stuff. And it's one thing to drive 78,000 miles where you're gone for, let's say, a month at a time, and then you come home for a week and you're gone for a month. It's another thing to do it where you're gone for 3 to 4 days, then you drive home, then 3 or 4 days later you drive back, or 2 days later you drive back, and it's just a constant back and forth. That the wear and tear.
I remember vividly one account of, I'm in Myrtle Beach for 2 days, and I had one of my biggest accounts call. And it was in Rome, Georgia. And hey, I got 6 guys, and they can only be here tomorrow. And it's like, let me look at a calendar, and I'm like, shit. Rome, Georgia is 7 hours from here.
Mm-hmm.
And
some of you that don't know, Rome, Georgia is north of Atlanta.
it's
right about an hour,
and a half.
70 some miles.
And the worst drive in the world is either Charleston or Myrtle to Atlanta, because there's just no quick way. It's back roads till you get to 95. Then you got to cut over. And I got out of Myrtle at about 4 o'clock. And of course, Murphy's Law, getting near 95 to 26, accident. So I get into Rome at around 2 in the morning. We start at 8. And it was a massive day. It was worth it. But I look back at stuff like that, and would I do that now? Fuck no. There's no fucking way. Zero chance.
How to tell everybody how the PXG models differ from the industry standard.
In what way? The clubs or the model?
The model that you guys use. Okay, so you grow 90%. It's new, but it's not going to grow 90% if it's just copycatting any of the other players in that segment of the market.
We shied away. So our roles were, every big company, Titleist, Cobra, TaylorMade, Callaway, Ping, they had their reps. They had their sales reps. But they also had fitting specialists. So, and that's how I started, as a fitting specialist for Cobra and then Titleist. So the reps aren't driving 80,000 miles. The reps are setting days up for the fitting specialist. The fitting specialist in peak season might work 3 days a week, where with us, we were the rep, the fitting specialist. We were the point of contact for account setup. We were the point of contact for warranty and repair. We were all in one. So to get into to get into clubs without knowing anything, it's like, okay, well, if I'm in Atlanta and I'm fitting 2 members at Peachtree, and that's it, my day's done. It's like, okay, well, I'm not going home because I need to get in these other clubs. I would go to, good one, TPC Sugarloaf. That was one of our signed locations. So it's go meet the pros. Go to Capital City Club in Brookhaven, where Steve Archer I knew because he was down at Frederica when I was doing a lot of Titleist stuff. So it's talking with him, and it's just, look, you have any members that want to get fit? Here's my card. I'll come out and fit that one member. And they were sort of, huh? Because we didn't do the conventional demo day, because if someone's spending $3,000 for irons, we don't want them hassled while they're getting fit.
Mm-hmm.
And we wanted one-on-one time. We wanted to give them experience, and from that aspect, it grew. Once one guy got fit, got his club, someone hit him, then we're getting phone calls. And it just snowballed into this massive thing of, hey, I got 3 guys. Hey, I got 5 guys. Travis Nance, who was on staff with me for a while up at Barnsley, I mean, he did a phenomenal job of just bringing everyone in. And then Atlanta just became massive. And then it was time, okay, what's the other areas we can build up? Here was easy for me. The Bluffton, Hilton Head area was simple. Then it's like, okay, let's look at Columbia. Let's look at Greenville. Let's look at Southwest Georgia. And it just kept going.
How big's your territory?
I'm not fitting anymore, so I'm more in a management role. So I have the Carolinas, Georgia, Virginia, and I just acquired half of Tennessee from Nashville East. So now I have 6 fitters, 2 sales specialists, and then we have a retail location at Lenox Mall in Atlanta. So there's 6 or 7 employees there. So now, and I miss the fitting aspect from the sense of being outside every day and being in front of people.
The human interaction.
Human interaction. I was in D.C. about a month ago with Louise, our cousin, and we were talking at dinner, and I told her, I go, I'd rather be in front of 40 people than in front of no one. I'd be more comfortable talking to all 40 people than sitting in front of a computer and reading spreadsheets, which now I get, my average day now, or my normal day, wake up,
Wait, before you go there, we'll get to that in a minute. So everybody that's listening understands that the PXG model was developed as more. They wanted the experience to be more intimate in that it was one-on-one and not just this giant group atmosphere like a circus, as most demo days. When a club sponsors a demo day, as many people listening have probably attended, it's probably 3 to 5 manufacturers out there at once and people running everywhere, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
And PXG didn't want that. They said, okay, if we're going to give
Well, no, we did. I mean, because if we weren't in a club and that was our way in a club, we would go do that demo day. And if we garnered quite a bit of interest, then it was like, okay, here's my card. Here's Joe Smith, Sam Stevens, blah, 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 are interested. If you can get them together, I'm happy to come fit those 2 guys and leave. And pros couldn't wrap their head around that. It's like, well, you'll come here for 2 guys? Absolutely. Come here for 1. We need to grow. Here's how we can do it. Atlanta was a little different because TPC Sugarloaf was a hub location for us, meaning the people who weren't members at the Piedmont Driving Clubs, the Ansley Setting Downs, the Peach Trees, we can take them to Sugarloaf and fit them. So we had 2 channels. We would go to Greengrass, or we had our DTC customer, direct to consumer. Mm-hmm. So those were our 2 avenues of how we did it.
And it obviously worked.
It worked.
Do you think that PXG's revolutionized the price model for clubs forever, especially in the higher end category?
In the States, yes. In Asia, no. Because, you had Hanma, who was selling $100,000 sets of gold golf clubs.
Makes a $7,000 from PXG look like a drop in the bucket.
And, in America, though, yes. I mean, I was in Charleston a couple months ago, and Bobby Andrews, the Titleist rep there, who I've known pushing 20 years, him and I are at lunch one day, and I asked him, I go, did you ever think Titleist would come out and sell $240 irons? He's like, no. He goes, thank you, PXG. Mm-hmm. Callaway the same, TaylorMade. Ping hasn't gotten there yet. They don't need to. Cobra has their lane, and they stick to it, and they do well. I mean, no one makes bad clubs anymore, just with all the materials out there. It's just what the individual wants.
And the weight port's the idea behind that, because it's on PXG, it's in everything from the putters all the way to the drivers. So
right.
That has to make inventory control much easier.
It's
the quality control is better.
Quality control is phenomenal. I mean, watching every year I go to Scottsdale for our meeting and watch the build team. It's incredible. They have build pods, and it just keeps growing and growing. First time I went, I want to say there were 6 build pods. I want to say now there's 50.
Jesus. You had mentioned your territory, how it's changed now that you've advanced it to the territory manager. The store, you mentioned the store. Mm-hmm. It seems like, as PXG is the revolutionary mindset within the industry, at least on the manufacturer side, creating their own store it was done before, but never done really successfully, and a lot of them seemed to fall to the wayside. Almost, and then everyone was saying this is never going to work. Like they told Apple, store was never going to work, and now Apple's the number one retailer in the world.
Right.
Is the store? Did you see it coming along to where it's going to be as successful as the brand, so to speak, has been?
So our store opened. It's been one full year now. January 5th was one full year. The first year the store did 2.7 million.
Mm-hmm.
I was reluctant of where the store was going just because I thought up north would have been better at Avalon Mall, but I have no say in that. Chicago was the first store, and it's literally in an industrial park down from Northbrook Court. You'd never know it was there unless you saw a van. Seattle, I believe, was 2. We were 3. Minneapolis was 4. They opened a second store in Arizona, and then Dallas is getting a store this coming year. So
that model's working too.
That model's working. Well, there's no excuses from the field guys anymore. Like, especially my fitter in Atlanta can't say, well, it's raining, I got to cancel my day. No, get him to the store.
Mm-hmm.
There's no weather. There's no, if it rains, guy can't, if he wants to cancel, he's going to cancel, but we can drive all that business to the store.
So the stores have their own fitting.
Stores are, the Minneapolis store's 7,000 square feet. It's massive. Our store in Atlanta, I think, is just over 3. But there's 2 hitting bays, putting greens, apparel, and I was shocked. I wasn't shocked, but I was pleasantly surprised. And before COVID hit, we were doing all these events. Because I would go to all the green grass accounts in Atlanta and just say, hey, look, one of the first places I went to was Peachtree, because I have a very good relationship with them. And, Collier Smith's the first assistant, and Don Perno. And I just flat out told them, look, whenever you guys want, if it's raining, you need to do a lesson, bring them to the store. Because the store to Peachtree's 8 minutes. And Perno's like, wait, if it's raining, I got someone who wants to get fit. If he goes to the store, you're going to fit him and charge it through me? Yeah. He's like, shit, sounds great. And then, we can do product seminars, so we can get all the PGA guys their points. So we would do product seminars, parties for all these accounts, and it was a home run.
The you had worked for Cobra and Titleist as a fitting tech.
Mm-hmm.
How does because every company has its own culture, their own mantra, and it's kind of what they stand for, right, in the industry. Cobra is a little more hip, Titleist a little more traditional.
Correct.
What's the culture like at PXG? Is it the revolutionary like the advertising is and what the products are? Or
it was, when I started with Cobra and Titleist, it was Titleist wanted you clean shaven. They wanted, buttoned up, clean shaven, they projected this image, which was fine. I had no issue with it. Cobra was fun. PXG was like the black sheep of the golf family. It's like, we don't give a shit if you have a goatee braided. If you're selling, go.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'd never really grown a beard. I grew a beard, and guys are like, we didn't even recognize you. It's like, and it was just, they don't, be respectful, obviously, with the accounts. But other than that, the culture's fun. It's very, very fun. Having an owner like Mr. Parsons, who he's out there in a good way. Mm-hmm. From the standpoint of him, how he takes care of the employees, it's incredible. The benefits are phenomenal. We pay for nothing when we're on the road. It's all expensed. I talked to the Cobra rep. You know, he's 1099. He's out of pocket when he travels. Some of the other reps aren't like that. Some are. And it's just, you know, I mean, I can't tell you that first full year I was with them, how much I've spent in hotel rooms.
1,000,000 miles worth.
I had 1,000,000 points at halfway through December. So then I switched over to Marriott, and now I'm at like 700,000 with them.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, and then per diem for food, you know, it's, hey, you have a good day, take the guys from the club out to dinner. You know, if you're going to go out and have some drinks, spend $200 on an Uber. We don't care as long as you're not in that van. And, you know, one of the things for me was if I was in that van, I didn't drink. I was too afraid of getting pulled or getting a DUI, and it wasn't worth it.
It's probably some of the benefit of being privately owned because you've got a guy who's calling the shots, and it seems when that's the case, it's much more common sense instead of groupthink and
right.
Let's do this, and then you get accountants too involved, not to knock on accountants, but then you're looking at bottom line. Well, we can't do this, and as you alluded to from the beginning, it was all about the experience. So if it's going to be all about the experience, okay, let's have that mantra through every single thing we do, and it will drive everything towards the result that we're hoping for.
Yeah, and I've talked to plenty of guys at Titleist because, you know, I know a bunch of those guys. Wes Westmoreland, who's the regional, he's in Atlanta. Bobby Andrews, Steve Pence, who basically mentored me in all this, and they all said the same thing. If Titleist had their way, they'd go to this model.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the rep's the rep, but it's all about selling golf clubs.
Right.
Well, Titleist is a golf ball company that sells golf clubs.
You know, let's talk about a typical day. So when you started and you were the local rep, so to speak, / fitter, what would a typical day be like?
What month? So let's start in February. You know, January typically for the last 4 years is our slowest month. Now with the store there, that's changed, but all I would do in January is you obviously want to sell. So I would set days up, but more importantly, I was setting up spring. So my calendar, I wanted March booked out by the end of January. Starting in February, April would be booked out. And then so forth.
Because that's the season.
That's the season.
For this area.
So my second year, when I got promoted, I had to hire someone, and I found a fantastic guy on a recommendation from a buddy at Titleist. Him and I worked 29 days in April, and we worked, I think, 29 in May, and did close to 700,000 in April. And it was just, and that's how we did it. You know, January, it's just, you're coming off holiday season. So people spend a boatload of money. They're getting back in the swing of things, work, family.
And in today's world, they're starting everything's done in advance with the technology age.
Sure.
They're as the holiday hangover, I call it, is they're sitting there paying their bills and doing everything, and usually the weather is not as conducive at that time of year, even in this area, to do a whole lot outside. But they're planning, as you said, what they're going to do in March, what they're going to do in April.
Correct. You know, family vacation, spring break,
right.
All that stuff. So when I got promoted, then it was like, okay, I don't need to worry about South Carolina and Georgia. I've been doing it almost 3 years. I would get all the numbers, green grass numbers from the accounts. I'd get all the direct business numbers, and it's where's the hole? And when I first started, the hole was Northern Virginia, that D.C. area. And I would look at the numbers, and three of the wealthiest counties in the country are in Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, why are they just not doing any business? So the fitter who covered that was promoted to sales specialist, I think they call it. So I meet with him, and I'm like, why are there holes here? You know your territory better than I do. So my number one target was Northern Virginia. And how that got built up was somewhat lucky, but somewhat timing was right in the sense we hired a guy to be the store fitter. And I had met him a few times, phenomenal fitter. And he ended up being an assistant store manager in about 5 days. And it's like, okay, that's fine. You know, let him fit, let him run the store. And we had to let go of one of the fitters in Virginia. Wasn't working out. And Matthew's family, his children are there. And he goes, I'd really like this job. I'm like, done. Yours. And getting him there. And he
so the kid that was the store manager, you moved from Atlanta back to DC area?
Back to, you know, he's from Richmond, so he's based out of Richmond, but he just knew a ton of people.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously with COVID, our biggest account this year was Richmond. It's called the Foundry, and it's our honey hole. And down the street you have Kinloch. Well, then you get into Arlington, and Washington Golf and Country Club was shut down for a year, and they put up an $18 million learning center, and they redid their range, and it almost looks like Topgolf, but they have 8 stations on the bottom, 8 stations up top, all heated, and there is zero shortage of money there. And it's absolutely phenomenal. And Matthew, I think, took 5 or 6 accounts up there from 10 grand to the one that did the lease was about 50. So right person, right time, get him in there, and just took off.
What is a typical day for a fitter? Say in season. So in season meaning in the spring in the southeast in your territory, or in the summer in the northern part of the country.
Typical day for them is, and I'm lucky because these guys they're very professional. They know what they're doing. They're good fitters. And I was asked by my boss, well, how many team calls do you have a week? I go, none. Why? They're grown-ups. If they don't know how to do their job, I'll fire them. I go, I don't mean to sound like a hard ass, but they know this. If I have to check in on them, then typical day for those guys, we have these hub locations. So all a hub is to drive traffic to that hub. So if we can't get to Washington Golf and Country Club, but they have a member who wants to get fit, and our Virginia fitters at River Creek, which is our hub, well, it's 20 minutes away. Well, we can't get you to, if you want to get in today, here's an availability here. Mm-hmm. If not, it's next week. So these guys are bouncing around the hub locations, and people book online. So if they open, like our fitting studio here is Berkeley Hall. So they can go online, they can see, Berkeley Hall's open March 18th, and their fitter's going to be there from 10 to 4. Well, a guy can pick it up or go online, pick 2 o'clock, he's in. Then our hub in Charleston is Daniel Island, Pawleys Island's Dresser Golf Academy. In Charlotte, Northstone, we have a bunch in Virginia, and that's how it's just going to keep going. With Tennessee, I'm going to have to go spend a lot of time in Tennessee just to get that going. So that's my project this year, is going to be Tennessee and then the Columbia, Greenville, Spartanburg area, because we have a big hole there. So it's just finding those holes and growing them.
So the reps they're fitting, they use TrackMan or Flight Scope?
TrackMan.
And then they have the van is basically full of clubs.
Van is 400 shafts.
For irons, woods,
wedges,
everything.
hybrids, fairways. Then we have putter fitting kit. There's no shortage of equipment.
Yeah, I've seen it up close and personal.
Right.
So, what would it? Since you've done it quite often, how do you go? What would be a normal fitting session sort of? So some guy gets online, he says, "Hey, I want to go to. I found you guys have a hub in Charlotte. I'm 10 minutes away. I hit my buddy's PXGs. I want to get fit. Mm-hmm. What's the process that somebody goes through for that?" He said, "I'm going to sign up for Saturday at 10 o'clock."
So he'll be there Saturday. Chris will be there, and first thing gets there, and I spend a lot of time with Chris, and you always want to ask the customer, what are you looking to get out of this?
Set the expectation.
Set the expectation. We've had guys come in, well, I just want to hit it further. Okay, well, here's this iron. Hit it. Well, you hit it 15 yards further.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know. What else do you want? That's why we're here. And so you get, today too, it's a distance craze. You see it. We've talked about it. But you look at where all these companies are going, 7 irons are 28 degrees.
Yeah, it's an old 5 iron.
Right? So, one of my closest friends, Ben Showman, who's the tour rep for Cobra, him and I talk about it all the time. It's like, are you going to sacrifice playability to hit one iron, to hit your irons 9 yards further? Because if you can't hold a green, now you're 10 yards over, you're in the water, bunker. So it's just based on an individual and what they're looking for. If they just want to hit it further, okay, here we go. We'll hit it further. The better players are very specific. Those guys are either very, very easy or very, very difficult. There is no in the middle with a better player. And when I mean better player, I mean like a true scratch golfer.
Yeah, they either know what they want or they're so finicky that it's like you tweak something. No, I don't like this. Tweak it again.
Tweak it again. I don't like it. I mean, I remember vividly one of my fittings at Peachtree, Harold Wyatt. Harold's extremely successful and a phenomenal player. Harold played the Nike Tour back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
Harold comes out, and I'm sitting with Don at Peachtree, and Harold's expecting this extravagant fitting. So Harold has, I want to say he had one of the first Titleist blades, X100, and Harold could move it. Harold, how long have you had these clubs? 9 years. He goes, I just keep getting new ones. All right. What are your specs? Half long, 2 flat. All right, hit this. He's like, it's amazing. I'm like, you're done. He's like, what? You're done. Well, should I try? I go, Harold, you've been in that same club 9 years, same specs. Why am I going to mess with them? He's like, all right, order them.
Right.
Literally 5 minutes. Some other guys, it's that don't know, like,
you don't have to name names.
Yeah, like the electric guy who became a really good friend of mine, Brian in Atlanta. He don't care. I met him at Chichessie Creek, and he had just bought brand new AP3s. It's member guest, and he's taking the plastic off them. Comes walking over. I just want to see what these are about. Yeah, hit yours. He's like, I haven't hit them. I just got fit. Watching him hit. I'm like, Brian, hit this and just swing away. And he's like, what the shit? I'm like, where'd you get fit for these? And I forget what he said. And he's like, fuck this, order me a set. I'm like, you haven't even hit those. He's like, I don't care. And then when I was in Atlanta again, he came out, and then I ended up playing with him a couple times, and fantastic guy. It's like whenever something comes out, I get a fitter to him. Mm-hmm. And he's just become a great customer. He believes in the product. But it's finicky. I mean, we'll have women come out and, we're here for a full bag. Well, you don't need a full bag. Based off your speed, here's what you need. Obviously would love to sell you a full bag. At the same time, you don't need it. You need 11 clubs, and that's it. So it's been fun. The fitters, their typical day, I help them out as much as I can. I deal with more of the bullshit, though, that I don't want them to deal with.
The problem solving.
Problem solving. Their job is to go out and sell golf clubs. Their job is not to deal with, Country Club XYZ's accountant. I'll take care of that. They don't need that added stress, especially if they're on a range for 8 hours and they got to drive 4 to their next stop. They don't need to deal with that. I handle all that.
with employees, I think what you said you had.
If you count the store, almost 12 or 13.
How do you keep them motivated or incentivized?
When I started, I always set goals. So my first year, get promoted. I had no clue after that first year that I was going to be Region of the Year. It's challenging them. You know, I get all their numbers. I get their monthly numbers of what they sold. This year, I set their numbers for them. I talked to each one individually, and I'm like, here's what you did in March of 20. Now, granted, we lost 2 weeks because of COVID. We lost our biggest, so we basically lost 2 massive months, which in a way I'm not upset about because we grew last year 118%. And then this year they want us to grow 30. And so instead of complaining about, well, hey, we just grew 118%, you want us to grow 30, that's my goal. Grow 30. Find business. The fitters, though, I found out, because I'd always sort of worked alone. You know, whether I was at Belfair, the IJGA, I was sort of left alone. All I did was fit people.
Yeah, now
clubs.
you've got employees under you, a dozen people.
Now I got a dozen people, and you have to talk to each one of them differently. Mm-hmm. I can't speak to the Atlanta fitter the way I can speak to the Charlotte fitter, or the store guys are different altogether. So all good guys, you know, I talk to everyone with the exception of the store because, you know, we have a store manager, we have an assistant store manager. They're doing really well. So I check in on them, you know, once or twice a week. All my field guys, though, I talk to every day, each one of them. Just, hey, how are you? You need help with anything? If there's anything I can do, let me know. And, you know, I'll get phone calls at 6 at night. They'll get a nasty email from an account, and don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. So they're motivated enough. I know, you know, a big thing when I started, I always wanted to sell over $1 million out of my van. Mm-hmm. And I bring that up to each of them, and I think all of them can do it this year.
So it's just saying, you know, well, it's a trust, especially in today's world with all the crazy shit that's been happening, is a big thing. And I think in any hierarchy environment, if you have the trust of develop the trust, in other words, you give the people who you're overseeing in your leadership position the ability to do what they need to do and support them and back them, then that trust gets developed on its own. You don't have to force it. And they'll go above and beyond what they need.
Sure. And it's, you know, I was lucky in the sense that I got to hire everyone. You know, the Charlotte sales rep, McLean Boyd, I've known 10 years. I remember I knew him from when he was with Cleveland. You knew his father, Bob. Mm-hmm. The Atlanta fitter I hired. The guy to take my place when I got out of the van I hired. The Virginia fitter I hired. So the Charlotte fitter I hired. Hired some of the guys in the store. So if it doesn't work, it's on me. Now, at the same time, if it doesn't work and I don't feel like it's working, I can go to my supervisor and say, this isn't working with him. Now, would I do that? I mean, everything's fine. Everything's good right now. It's just I have to get creative in how can I generate more revenue. So it's, you know, certain segments of my market where, okay, this area is lacking something. How do we build this area up? And so far, so good.
You know, being a rep or being in sales does afford a bit of a luxury that you have free time, but the free time can develop complacency very quickly. What do you do to maintain some sort of structure so you don't fall into a complacent state of mind?
That's a great question. So when COVID hit, I was supposed to fly to Richmond. Our staff, the foundry, I think, as I said, is our biggest account. Mike Maroney's our staff guy there. And I had been talking to Mike, and it's Mike, when are you available? He's like, whenever you are, just come on up. So I had planned to fly to Richmond on March 17th. I get a call March 16th saying, shut everything down. It's like, okay. And what's going on? Well, with what's going on, we don't want you guys in the air. We don't want you guys fitting. Too much is going on. So that first probably 4 days we were shut down, I'm not going to lie, it was pretty sweet. I mean, I'd wake up, I'd grab the baby, I'd feed her, I'd make breakfast for Lindy, and we'd just hang out. It was awesome. For me, though, after about 3 days, I start going nuts. So I had, what did I have? I had reports from people who were buying online. And I had more reports for our green grass account. So it's like, okay. And we discounted our clubs for COVID,
Just to keep money coming in.
Just to keep money, and we didn't close the build department where everyone else was shut down. Mm-hmm. I know Ping quit selling product because they had a new product launching. So they were down for 6 weeks. And I had all the guys, I'm like, go through your fitting sheets and let's just start calling people. And not so much as a slimy sales rep, but hey, wanted to thank you for purchasing, blah, 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 right? And I started calling a bunch. I think I had 3,000 fitting sheets from when I was in the van. And I would go through them. And, I'm going to call him. Hey, hope you're well. Hope your family's well. And that's the cool thing. Like, I always want to forge a relationship with the account, the customer, whatever. And it's, look, we fit you. Just because we fit you and you bought clubs, don't feel like you can't call us. And I think that's where we're different, because the amount of people who called and bought, I think we did, the last 2 weeks of March, we did 250,000 and never fit a golf club. Now with that, hey, if it's not right, when we're allowed to fit you, we'll fit you. And if we need to change it, we'll change it. And it was crazy. April, we did, I think, 300 with ever fitting a golf club. Now, we had to go back and fix some stuff, but the fixes weren't major fixes. It could have been a lie tweak, or it could have been, hey, these grips. It's like, fine, here's new grips. Mm-hmm. It was pretty spectacular.
Yeah, I think a lot of companies, and this goes cross-industrial, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, sales or you're selling widgets, that people forget the cost of acquisition of a customer or client. And if you're going to spend X amount of money and time and effort building your customer base, then utilizing them because you've already developed the relationship is key to basically having them promote you amongst their friends and their inner circles and so on. You're going to grow a hell of a lot faster than you are going to beat your head against the wall and trying to develop new relationships. Now, obviously you have to do that as well, which adds, to the stress level of everyone's life, but it's part of any industry.
Yeah, the cool thing about it, though, too, Pete, is like McLean in Charlotte, he had his guys. Chris Thompson, who's my fitter in Atlanta, had his guys. I had my guys. The newer guys didn't have that, but, I mean, we can't expect them to just sell, 20,000 a week because they don't have that customer base. Mm-hmm. The guys who've been here, though, we had that base. We were able to reach out to accounts, and it just worked. It was almost COVID in general for the golf business was a blessing.
It was a blessing.
It was a massive blessing. For Titleist to run out of golf balls, that's unheard of. Unheard of. I mean, I've called, I can't tell you how many Titleist reps to get golf balls for the store, and they're like, we can't get them. We can't get them. And I got lucky. I was at one of my accounts up in the mountains in North Carolina. And you remember Brian Fox. Mm-hmm. Brian's the director of golf at Mountaintop. Just a spectacular facility. It's absolutely incredible. And we're at dinner one night, and I'm like, yeah, I can't find golf balls. He's like, well, what do you need? I tried getting Pro V1X range balls. He's like, well, I got 15 dozen I'm getting ready to send back. I'm like, well, I'll buy 2 off you. He's like, huh? Oh, I'm not paying. It's for the store. So it's going on comp, and I'm like, you can literally sell those. I go, I can have 15 reps call you right now who want those. And I told Pence and Bobby Andrews, and they ended up getting those balls switched over to their territory because they couldn't get them. The tour, that's a little different. That's where all the balls were going.
Right.
You know, LPGA, PGA, Korn Ferry, those guys got theirs. But, you know, talking to Steve and Bobby A., I mean, they were limiting who they were giving their golf balls to. And it's their 4 biggest accounts is who's getting them.
In having so many accounts that you have, is it better to have more and grow it faster, or smaller and more focused? Given that seems to be the focus is the model that PXG was built on.
It's shifted because when we discounted some of the clubs, it shifted a little. So, and to grow, you know, you can't sell $7,000 sets of golf clubs year after year. It's not happening. Like, no one's buying a brand new MacBook every year. Mm-mm. Well, they might. It's that certain individual. So we came out with a 0211 line, and it's not the premium line, but it's phenomenal. And that was geared more toward the military. Because whenever we'd go do fitting days, you know, we'd hear, well, I'm a Marine. Do Marines get discounts? Well, no. Well, why not? You know, your owner's a Marine. What's he do for Marines? Well, not much other than donate $50 million a year to the Corps. It's like, okay. So he, you know, to get rid of the Gen 1 line, he created a hero program, and it was for first responders, police force. So we have 3 tiers now where we have 3 different price points where we can basically hit every market segment. And it's changed since PXG started. You know, we'll always have a premium line. It's the best components, everything.
Well, yeah, it's the evolution of a brand, in that if it started as, hey, we're going to sell high-end golf clubs, but we're really going to do it through the experience and customize the experience and cater it to the individual. If it might have started at, we're going to be high end, the evolution was it evolved into customization and personalization.
Correct.
And that's become the leading beacon, and now everything goes towards that. So you can branch off and have lower priced products and still give what the company has become known for, and it's individualized, and you're going to get taken care of. Right. As well as the quality. You got both sides of the coin that really checks the boxes that people like.
Absolutely.
Life on the road, you know, we talked about a little bit earlier on how much you traveled. How many times have you looked up at a ceiling and wondered where the hell you were when you wake up? Which is I remember those days from playing tour golf, and it's a scary feeling and it's an exhilarating feeling all at the same time, where you realize where you are.
To be honest, it hasn't really happened a lot. I remember one time I'm in Atlanta and I forget what's going on. Football games going on. You know, and Atlanta has a ton of conferences. You know, you have Cox Media, Home Depot. And I'm looking for hotels. I'm in Buckhead. Actually, I'm by where the store is now. I'm in Buckhead eating lunch, and I'm just trying to find a hotel. And I always used apps because it's just easier to book on an app. So I'm sitting there, nothing. The closest hotel is Flowery Branch, Georgia, where the Falcons play. That's an hour and 40 minutes north. And I had to be at Cap City, which is 2 minutes from where I was. And I'm like, there's no way I'm driving an hour, 40 minutes north.
Not in Atlanta traffic.
No, because an hour and 40 minutes Atlanta traffic could be 3.5 hours. So I'm looking, and in that Buckhead area, you had a Ritz, I forget, there's a bunch. They're all booked, so I'm looking. The Mandarin. Call them. You have any rooms? We have 2 left. I want one. Okay. I go, here's my credit card. Don't care what it costs. Just book it for 2 nights. Perfect. So get over there, check in. I'm at Cap City the next day, and it's probably 100 degrees out. And I think I had like 6 appointments and just ended up staying. Got there at noon, don't leave till almost 8. Get to the hotel, go to the bar, eat half a salad, drink some water, go take a shower, wake up, do it again the next day. Go to checkout, and my bill's $2,000. And I'm just like, fuck me. So my boss at the time, I call Ryan, and I'm like, I got a little issue. He's like, what's the matter? I go, there was literally no hotels in Atlanta. He's like, what happened? I go, I stayed at the Mandarin. He's like, how much? I go, $2,000. He's like, you fucking kidding me? I go, no. He's like, what'd you sell the last 2 days? I go, 20. He's like, oh, you're fine. He's like, you're good. He goes, if you would have said 2,000, you would have been paying half of it. I'm like, that's all right. All good. It won't happen again.
You know, as you and I have always worked out and tried to eat as healthy as can, minus our cheat days where we eat half a cake each watching a golf tournament or PGA event. How do you find eating and staying healthy while you're on the road?
First full year, it was, I went from working out 6 days a week, every day, eating really clean. And then it just got to the point when you're on the road.
Because you were doing the keto for a long time.
No, right? I didn't start keto yet. I was just eating clean. I mean, I hadn't had fast food in 7 years. First year on the van, I must have gained 15 pounds. I think I got to I went from 205 with a 33.5-inch waist to, after that, probably first 15 months, I was 213 and a 36-inch waist. And then it's like, okay. And, I had some seizures. So I would still see spots once in a while. Thank God, never driving. I was going to Cincinnati to see a neuro. And then I remember you sent me a podcast, a Tim Ferriss podcast with Dom DiAgostino. So I'm listening to that. And then Joe Rogan had him on. And, if you ever want to, eating wise, this and that, the Charlie Foundation. So I got home one day and go on Charlie Foundation website, and I find a lady in Charleston who does all that stuff for children with epilepsy. So go meet her. She's like, what's going on? Tell her. And she's like, okay, here's your meal plan. Here's this. So I get into ketosis within 6 days. About a month later, I'm in Augusta.
Did you go through the keto flu?
I went through the keto flu, and I'm like, this isn't working, And then out of the blue, it's like I lost 10 pounds. And then I went from 213 to 183 in about 2 months. And lo and behold, have a seizure. And I'm just like, what the fuck? I thought this was supposed to prevent them. Call the doctor in in Cincinnati, call Laura in Charleston, and they get all my blood work, and they're like, well, your sodium dipped to 120. Now, average person's going to be 138. So Laura's like, start drinking this drink. Okay. And then after that, really, I've had zero issues. But it's, when I got into ketosis, it was easy to eat clean again. Prior to that, though, I mean, you're working all day, driving from Atlanta to Greenville at 7 at night. You're not taking the time to eat a good meal. Oh, hey, Chick-fil-A, Oreo milkshake and 2 chicken sandwiches. Right. Perfect. The position now I'm in, it's easier because I'm not on the road as much. I can do a lot of work from home. Well, not really, because I have a baby who's always tugging my leg, but I can come to your place and work for 5 hours and raid your fridge, or I can go to the coffee shop, grab a salad, sit in a corner, and get my stuff done. But it's difficult. I don't know how guys, And I talked to the cool thing was, being on the road that much, we would talk to other reps. Like I'd talk to Kyle, who was in Ohio. I'd talk to Nick Petrolia at the time, who was in Southern California, McLean, who was in Charlotte, Aaron in Tennessee. And, what are you doing? Kyle, I'm going through Wendy's. And then I'd hear, can I get 3 doubles? And it was, or I'd talk to McLean, he'd be at Bojangles, can I get 3 biscuits? I'm like, what the shit? But it made you feel like shit when you're standing outside the next day and it's 100 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
So something had to change.
Yeah, Doc Hollis has got you on the right path now. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. So
he's amazing.
He's awesome. Like I talked to him the other day, and I've gained 10 pounds since COVID.
Mm-hmm. And
he's like, well, let's try this. Okay. So I think I've already lost 3. So
it's crazy. Everyone on Facebook was complaining about the COVID-10, the COVID-20, and I did that HCG. I lost 30. I lost too much, so I went the other way. But it's once you get over the hump, as you did with the keto, it's like you don't want to eat that stuff anymore.
No.
For people that are out there, you're contemplating, if you've gained X amount during COVID, it's not easy to get it going, but you have the initiative that you feel like shit. You got to do something. But once you get, what would you say once you do it, it takes about a week to get back. But when you start, it takes about what you say, anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks, depending on how.
For me, if I can eat clean for 7 days, I'm fine.
Mm-hmm.
After that, I'm good.
Yeah, that's what Doc Hollis told me. When I did the HCG the first time and lost 25 pounds, I think it was, and I said, okay, I'm ready to go back. How do I go back to eating? It was the other way. So you don't. You're supposed to eat clean.
It's funny. During COVID, I went in the garage because I have a gym, and I'm like, I'm going to see where my weights are at. So start squatting, light, loosen up, get this. Now I'm looking at my old weight I used to do. And I'm doing half of it. And I'm like, holy shit. Start deadlifting. And it's like, oh, fuck. I'm fucking done. This is depressing. Get me back in the house. I'm going to Five Guys. Fuck it. Right? So, but now I'm back. So it's good.
Yeah. Doc told me, he said, if you're going to eat, if you've been eating clean and then you eat something bad, let's say you can't stand it. You go to Wendy's or you go to get a bag of cookies or you're at a birthday party or whatever you're at. He said, you're just going to have to accept the fact you're going to feel like shit for 3 days.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember in ketosis, I knew it worked. I was at my in-laws for my nephew's birthday party, and my mother-in-law bought this chocolate cake that I can devour, and I didn't want any. And I'm like, wow, there's something to this. Mm-hmm. Plus the way you feel. You just feel like you feel light, you feel great.
Burning clean.
You're burning clean, exactly. And, I think I drank more in the last 10 months than I have in the last 5 years. And it's like, and I don't drink a lot. I'll come here with you, we'll have bourbon or wine or whatever, but I just don't have a taste for it really anymore.
People see a manufacturer's rep, especially PXG, with the as what the logo represents, is customized, personalized, and the whole experience, which they've done a very good job of doing. And it's like they see a rock star. And and I don't care who you ask, but if you ask what goes through your head when you see a golf rep, and almost everybody, if they're truthful, will say it's what can I get?
Sure.
How do you handle that? Because it's either you're getting that a lot as you come across people and they see that you work for PXG, or the people under you are getting that. How do you deal with it, and how do you tell them how to deal with it?
It's funny you bring that up. I remember when I was with Titleist, and we would go do an event somewhere, and I'd be with Steve Pence or I'd be with Bobby Andrews, and it was just those guys. And how do I get this? How do I get this? And Steve and Bobby were very good at, let me look into what I have going on. Let me see what my budget's like. And if I have it, we'll get it for you. And I go, if I don't have the budget, though, you're going to have to wait till next year. with us and with pros, we didn't really see it a lot. It was more of the people we fit. Well, do I get a free hat? Do I get this? And the story I tell all those guys, and not in a rude way, my very first fitting was with Dan Kubelik, who you know. Mm-hmm. And Dan has been sort of a mentor for me from a business side. Now, Dan's nuts, too, because, you know, golf's his vice, and Dan probably spends $100,000 a year on golf clubs. Dan comes out.
He could open his own store with
he
his used
could.
clubs.
So Dan comes out and gets fit, buys a full bag. That's my very first fitting with PXG. The second fitting, I drive up to Kiowa to the River Club. And Carol Priesinger, who was on staff with us at the time, and JJ Butcher, who you know, who eventually came on staff. I'm out there and, you know, here's your 2 fittings. Well, the first one cancels because he had a family emergency. Second one, older gentleman comes walking out. We fit him. He's there for a full bag. And he's like, okay. He's like, how much? So I'm adding it all up. And I won't mention any names because he's a pretty high profile figure. So I see him turn around and he has his hand up and it's like he's counting on his hand and he's like, okay, I need 6 sets. And I just look at him.
$50,000
and it was like 40 some thousand, but we also have $1,000 expedite program. So if you paid an extra 1,000, you got them the next day. And he's like, how quick? And I go, it's going to be about 2 weeks. He's like, well, I need a set here tomorrow. I go, it's an extra 1,000, you'll have it. He's like, all right, do an extra 1,000 for this set, and I'm flying to Colorado, have one there. So my first 2 fittings, I did close to $50,000. And William Gray, who hired me, called me the next day, and he's like, what in the fuck are you doing? I'm like, what are you talking about?
Give him a little tug.
Yeah. And he's like,
they're swinging.
He goes, first 2 days fitting, you're at $50K? And I go, well, it's what you hired me for. He's like, fuck, all right. He's like, you need anything, call me. So, and, you know, it was a whole different world. You know, and I think also back then it was so new and word was getting around that they want, you know, when someone with that much money wants something, they don't want to wait. Mm-mm. And so they were lined up in Atlanta. I think we did in 1 month at Capital City Club, I want to say we did like $75,000. And we were just camped out up there. And Steve Archer, who's just a phenomenal pro, you know, I went into his office and I go, Steve, I just don't want to show up. You know, that's not right. He goes, if my members want it, just let one of the guys know and do whatever you want. He goes, you're taking care of my member. I'm cool. Awesome. There's some other pros, though, who aren't like that. And, you know, they get a little twisted if you just show up. I never just showed up. I always, you know, that's just courtesy. Mm-hmm. You know, I learned that down here from you. You know, you always call before you go play. And that's just a common courtesy. So it's nuts. It's absolutely crazy, though.
You know, we mentioned a lot of people in your time in the industry, and I obviously seen you in golf. But just talk to a little bit about, because I remember as a kid, I mean, you were a skateboarder, mm-hmm. and you thought that golf was like the nerdy sport. But then once you got into it, you really took to it. You liked it.
Fuck, I hated golf. I remember getting dragged to Ramlin. I'm like, fuck, I don't want to go to Ramlin. I want to go play basketball.
You know, I remember we went to the range, and you, I don't know how, I was kind of into it already, at least a couple years, and you and Jimbo Seeloff went with,
yeah,
and you guys were throwing your golf ball so you could throw it further onto the range and who could hit it. But just give everybody kind of a quick backdrop of your career, not the cliff notes of getting into golf, because we both started at Great Oaks.
Well, I started it. You got me in. I remember I always wanted the cool basketball shoes. Mm-hmm. And Mom's like, fuck, you want them? Go buy them. So I remember your first internship was at Forest Lake, so I started caddying. And really, if I think about it, golf's really the only full-time job I've ever had since I was 13 years old. It started at Forest Lake, then it progressed to Great Oaks, where, hands down was probably my favorite job ever, just because of all the members, the people. And then, staring out the window one day in Michigan, for anyone in Michigan, it's 2 degrees and gray, and you called. I'm bitching. You're like, move here, I'll get you a job. You called 2 days later, you got 4 interviews. So I packed the car up and came down. Started at Old South, working on the bag drop, and then eventually moved into shop. Things didn't work out there, and I was lucky enough, at the time, Old Carolina was a sister course for us, and the 2 pros from there were at Belfair. And I was caddying at Berkeley Hall, and I ran into Jack Dean. He's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Just caddying at Berkeley." He's like, "Well, we need someone at Belfair." All right. He's like, "Bring your resume by tomorrow." Some resume. I mean, what's that? I didn't know all that. So I typed some shit up on a piece of paper, dropped it off. Then I ran into Kent Blatchko at Berkeley. He was playing with Mickey Chase, and they asked if I'd caddy. And Michael Frazier was like, "Yeah, go ahead." And Kent's like, "I hear you're going to come work at Belfair." I'm like, "Never got a call back." So I'm leaving Berkeley after that. Kent's like, "Let's go to the ale house." I'm like, "Nah, I'm good." He's like, "Well, no, your interview is at the ale house." Huh? Literally show up, shorts and a T-shirt, meet with Richard Schmidt and Blankenship and Jack, and you're hired. Start tomorrow. I'm like, huh? It's like,
Welcome
all right.
to the Low Country.
Welcome, Low Country. Show up at Belfair, no uniform. Richard gives me a Belfair shirt, and he's like, "Go pick the range." It's like, oh, okay. But Richard Schmidt is sort of, I have to thank him basically as much as Steve Pence or Ben Showman or Bobby Flood. We were doing our reviews. Richard calls me in his office, and he's sitting there just staring at me for about 60 seconds. And I'm like, "Am I getting fired?" He's like, "No." I'm like, he goes, "What the fuck are you doing working on the bag drop?" Like, verbatim. I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "You're too smart to be working out there." He's like, "What do you want to do?" And I'm like, "Richard, I don't want to be a club pro." And I was always a club junkie. At Great Oaks, I remember when members got new shit, I was always rifling through their bag. Or when you came home, when you had all the good stuff. And he's like, "Well, let me make a few phone calls." And he basically called every rep for me. And Pence called him back. And at that time, I believe when you were playing, you were on staff with Titleist. So that relationship there, and I go meet with Steve, and he's like, "Awesome. First day's next week."
That's crazy because I remember Steve's first day because everybody in this area was Wilson going back to the late 80s and early 90s. And for whatever reason, John White was the rep, still is the rep. He's been the rep forever and great guy. But Wilson segued into tennis. They started focusing on tennis, and they kind of pulled John out of here or wanted him going to the big cities. And then Titleist moved in. John Screen was Screener was the rep here.
Screener's like number 2 in line now.
Well, yeah, I was going to say Screener moved up, and they brought in Steve, and Steve had worked for Wilson.
Right.
And I remember Steve's first day because Screen came in and introduced me as one of his staff guys, and Pence and I have been great friends ever since. I love the guy to death. It's interesting how, and then Steve's the one that helps you get started with Titleist, and they were Titleist and Cobra back then.
They were Titleist. It was all under a Acushnet, and it was, if you look at it, it was almost too perfect because at the time Titleist was geared towards the better player.
Mm-hmm.
Classic, just for the better player. So when we would go do fit days or demo days, well, if the person couldn't fit into Titleist, well, here you go. Cobra, more forgiving, more playable, easier. And I mean, Cobra still owns the market for seniors and ladies. And they're segueing more into that better player category because they can, but it was a match made in heaven. And from there, that's, about a year into it, that's when it's sort of, for me, I started learning a lot. I got to meet two great friends, Bobby Flood and Sean McGinnis. They were running the Cobra van.
The tour van or just the fitting van?
It was a fitting van, but it ended up being their tour van.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a tour van on the road. So I met those guys and hung out with them for 2-3 days.
Because they were heading that fitting.
They were heading the fit van.
The fit van and the demo day stuff that you were doing, right?
Correct. Ben was more in charge of what was Ben's title? It was like fitting account manager. And Ben always wanted to be on tour, and it segued perfectly for Ben, and it was great. But having those guys to bounce ideas off of and learn from them, and then, one of your guests you had on, Bubba Krieger, when him and Alex were R&D on the golf ball side for Titleist and fitting, and they'd come in every year and going through stuff with them. And then another really good friend of mine, Craig Allen at Sea Island, who was the lead fitter and now he's the learning center manager. I had a lot of people, resources, so to speak, on hand, where when I was first in the business, it's like, hey, what do you think of this? And they're like, I have this guy doing this, and we'll try this. And then as that progressed, I found myself not calling those guys at all. And it's just, all those guys, I still talk to all of them, at least once a month, and it's cool to see where everyone's at. Bobby was with Cobra, now he's running the Titleist Fit program.
Yeah, because this process that or this background that we're talking about, at least from the time that you got here, is a multi-decade, 20-year time frame.
I mean, I started the demo day stuff in 2003. The fitting stuff I started to learn the end of that year, and then it never stopped.
And when did Richard move you off the bag drop into being the fitter?
Richard ended up leaving, and when Richard left, Rob Anderson came in. Now, I had met Rob multiple times down in Sea Island at Frederica. We used to go do a massive event there, the Sea Island Pro-Am. All it was a glorified real estate tournament. That's all it was. So you had
that when David Everett was president.
David Everett was president.
Well, he's a genius when it comes to that stuff. Yeah.
So it was Titleist and Peter. Well, at the time it was just Titleist sponsoring it. So everyone who played in that event got fit for whatever it was that year. Could have been a fairway, driver. The first year it was driver, and that's where I met Rob. And, Harmon went down to play from Secession. You had Perno bring a group in from Peachtree.
LACC guys were there, right?
Jim Schaefer, LACC was there. Charlie from Pine Valley. Bob Ford either played with Seminole or Oakmont. I mean, it was just a who's who. Take the top 10 clubs in the world or the U.S., they're there. So when Richard left, Shippy kept that job for maybe 3 months, and then Rob came in, and Rob's like, he's like, go do whatever you want at the Learning Center.
Well, yeah, because he came from Sea Island, and he knew what those guys were doing in sales.
He knew, and he's like, do whatever you want. He goes, I don't care what it costs. He's like, bring me what you're going to do. He goes, I'll get it approved by the board. And within a year, we gutted the Learning Center. We built a repair room, loft lie. I had every single fit cart.
Well, and then it helped because you had been doing the demo stuff and the fitting stuff for, at that point, 3 or 4 years?
Yeah.
So you had all the contacts in the shaft industry, the club industry, as those guys were making their way up and you were making your way up, right?
And then during the Heritage, we would get calls from, Burton Christie, who's the tour rep for Golf Pride. Philip Foster at the time was the tour rep for Graphite Design. Jim McIntosh was at UST. Those guys came out. They would call, hey, any chance? Yeah, come on. Well, Burton would literally, I remember when the multi-compounds came out, he literally dropped a case on my desk. He's like, give them to the guys. Tosh, Jim Mack, everyone called him Tosh. Literally, when Acts of Core came out, must have been 50 shafts in there. He's like, I was going to send these back. These are for your guys. Philip would drop off Graphite Design shaft. I mean, these aren't cheap shafts. Like when that Tour AD came out, it was $400. Philip's dropping off 15. He's like, give them to your guys. Give them to your guys. Here you go. And so, developing those relationships, and as everyone progressed, and then that led, when I was there at Belfair, that led into fitting all the kids from the IJGA.
Yeah, because they didn't have a fitter at the time.
They didn't have a fitter, and Mark Gonzalez was the CEO of the IJGA. So I fit Mark, and I can't remember his wife. His wife was a really good player. I fit them. He came in the next day. Rob came down because he wanted to meet with us, and he goes, would you guys be able to accommodate the kids? And it was like, well, this is going to have to get ran through the board. So board says no. Okay, no big deal. Why'd the board say no? Well, we have to run the sales through IJGA. Oh, no, I don't want to do that because I'm getting commission on clubs I sell. Mark comes back, and he brought Riley Hendry with him. And obviously, Joel, you played with her husband. So I'm sitting there with Mark and Riley, and here's what we can do. If 5 kids come, we get 3 sales, you get 2. Perfect, done. That led into that. So it got to a point, though, where some of the members were complaining because too many kids were there. Well, some of the kids who were coming out, I remember Stephanie Meadow. She ended up being the #1 amateur in the world for 4 years. She went to Alabama. Who you had on the podcast, I first met Aaron Terrazas when he was 13 years old. Mm-hmm. Matt Rushton, I met 13 years old. Matt Chang, 13 years old. And then it started to be...
All those guys and Stephanie are playing professional.
Professional. Then I started getting calls from the JPGA. Adam Russian was calling to bring kids from there out. And next thing I know, I'm getting calls from members at Colleton River, Berkeley Hall, Moss Creek, Sea Pines. And it just exploded.
And Belfair was getting the sales, right?
Belfair was getting the sales. And for whatever reason...
No, wait, hang before you go. Were they? So if somebody came from Colleton or Moss Creek,
we ordered the golf clubs.
You ordered the clubs because you could still get them things that they couldn't get through.
Correct. If they wanted some special shaft, I was getting it. If I had access to stuff that Colleton River, Berkeley Hall couldn't access. Mm-hmm. And if they could access it, the price was just to where...
The upcharge was ridiculous.
Yeah, we're not doing it. Where I can call the guys at Cobra and say, hey, I need this driver with this shaft. They're like, yeah, no problem. And then, I still don't know what happened at Belfair, but I'm glad it happened.
What was the change in revenue? Obviously, there was little to no revenue on hard
There was
goods.
little to no revenue, and I think I want to say they were... My first or second year, I think, is when it exploded. I want to say they went from like 32,000 to 150.
5 times.
5 times within, we'll call it 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the 3rd year, it was Jim Irvin was the director of instruction, and Jim stayed with us for, 6 months?
Yeah, most of his time here.
Shane LeBaron. And I remember vividly, one of the members came up to me and said, you need to go look for another job. Get out of here. And then they were doing a survey on the Learning Center. So I remember calling Billy Sampson. And Billy's like, when are you off? And I'm like, tomorrow. He's like, you need to come over here. Okay. Go to Spring Island, get there, and Mr. Ransom's in his office.
The Ernie Ransom.
The Ernie Ransom, chairman of Pine Valley for what?
Ever.
Yeah.
From like the 50s, I think.
Mr. Ransom's there, and he's like, how are you, sir? I'm very well. And he's like, tell me what's going on. Tell him. He's like, they're going to fire everyone at the Learning Center. He goes, because if you do a survey of one department, there has to be a survey of every department. He goes, so get your shit and get out of there. And Billy flat out told me, Billy's like, come work here. He goes, you're getting fired. I didn't believe it, so I'm like, why would they fire me? Like, all this revenue, and, Jim was killing it with lessons. Shane was killing it, so a couple of the members came up and even told me. So I remember going to the pro shop, and Rob had sent me a note, and he's like, "Can we talk after work?" Sure. Well, I had already cleaned my stuff up, and Rob was sweating, and the HR manager's talking, and I'm like, "Well, I knew I was getting fired." He's like, "What do you mean you knew you were getting fired?" I go, "I knew 2 weeks ago. I had 5 members tell me." And he looked over and he's like, "Well, we were going to pay you and cover your benefits for 3 months. We're going to cover them for 6. And honestly, it came at a perfect time because it was late March. The Heritage was coming up. Ben had just become the tour rep for Cobra. So he came in. I hung out in the Cobra van all week. And Riley called me. And she's like, "Can you come fit some kids?" Sure. And I told her what happened. She's like, "Really?" So that summer, I believe, late spring, I sit down with Riley and Matt Fields, and they're like, "We'd love for you to come fit all the kids." Really? Okay. And they're like, "Pay-wise, what are you looking for?" And I said this. And I go, "I want TrackMan, blah, blah, blah." And they're like, "Done." And I'm like, "Really?" They're like, "Yeah." And that's when Hank Haney ran it at the time. So from a fitting aspect, you want to talk about getting stuff. Hank was with TaylorMade.
Mm-hmm.
We had everything. I brought in everything, and we were doing, now mind you, this is with about 140 kids. We did about 180,000 with Titleists, over 100 with TaylorMade, over 100 with Ping. Reps love me.
So you went from basically you did 150 within the first 18 months at Belfair. I'm sure it probably, let's say it went up to 200 3 years later by the time you left. And the IJGA was paying you 3 out of every 5.
3 out of every 5.
60% of the fittings that they were bringing,
Correct.
They were giving you the money.
Right.
And now the IJGA says, "Wait a minute, we can bring you in and we can take all 100% of the money, and we're going to do more than double the amount of volume." How is this? That fell right into their lap.
And Riley was phenomenal. She was. I love her to death. I mean, because that was a revenue stream for them they never had.
Right.
They were always having to pay someone and getting gouged, and now they're keeping all the margin.
So let's say they're doing 400,000 in sales. What's the overhead or the profit margin? 20, 30%?
You figure at least 20%.
Okay, so now they go from doing nothing to 80,000 a year.
And I'm more than paid for. Mm-hmm. I pay for myself. And not only that,
plus you can bring in outside fittings.
I can bring
too.
outside.
And they're getting the sale.
They're getting that too.
So the clubs lost all the fitting revenue.
Yep.
That's what happens when you have
and I remember
consensus.
The fitter they brought in to take my place, I think lasted 6 months. And I can't tell you, the turnover that's gone on at Belfair over the last 15 years is crazy.
I can't believe James has lasted as long as he did.
I'm
glad that he got the position he did.
It's
unfortunately
awesome
for Ray.
Yeah. I'm happy for Swifty too. But that was the best thing that happened, was getting over there. And then, plus working with kids every day was awesome. Mm-hmm. It was so much fun, and that was probably the easiest job I've ever had in my life.
How did you go about helping put together the design of the fitting matrix of shafts as you went from older, say retirees or close to it demographic at the clubs and people who were coming in to see you to now a junior academy?
It was
it they wanted whatever that they saw on TV?
They wanted whatever they saw on TV. Money wasn't an issue because, they're paying $80,000 to be there basically for lodging and food. That doesn't include equipment. That doesn't include tournaments. Mm-hmm. So the TaylorMade aspect or the TaylorMade side of it was easy. Hank's there. You're getting whatever you want. Titleist and Pence saw it. You're getting whatever you want. Cobra, Showman's like, just make a list, yours. The only people who were sort of apprehensive were Ping and Callaway. And I sat down with the Ping rep.
Which is odd because Ping's big into college golf. And you would
Ping's
think that
big into
take
college
advantage of
golf. But when Brad came out and saw, he's like, I'm going to try and get you as much stuff free, but you're going to have to come out of, I'm like, that's fine. And then after that first year with Ping, he's like, you're getting whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
Callaway came late, and then Mizuno, Chris Sweeney, who was the rep at the time, is just like, here you go.
So everyone knows, getting whatever you want is not like, okay, we're going to give you everything free. It's like you want the high end, the Ozics at the time, and the
Diamanta's Graphite Design was making a huge splash. Project X had just come out with Hazardous.
Fujikura had their big line.
Fujikura had a massive line. So
you had the ability to fit the real stuff and not the
real.
Yeah.
And then the other cool side to that, though, too, Pete, was a lot of these kids my first year at the Academy, there were 150 kids. And if you combine boys and girls, we had probably 15 to 20 kids in the top 100 in the country. And so there was another avenue for me to reach out to Jim Ahern, who ran the entire amateur program for Titleist. So I would send Jim a note. Jim, got a kid, with the help of Bubba and Alex and Pence, got a kid I think would fit the criteria really well. Have him send a resume. One of them was Aaron, but then Aaron ended up going to Ping. But then, Matt Chang, I remember his second or third year there, made 26 birdies at the Davis Love Invitational at Sea Island. And I remember Davis Love asking, like, who the hell is this kid? It's like, he goes, in 3 days, I'm not making 26 birdies here.
Unfortunately, Chang might not have been able to count the amount of birdies he made.
No, Chang was so stupid. But like Phil Mickelson said, you got to be really smart or really stupid. And I mean, but then, Kelly Whaley was there. Susie's
Rushton
daughter
was on with Titleist for a long time.
Rushton was on with Titleist for a long time. Aaron was on it for a while. I can't remember Stan. Stan was there when Rushton was probably a sophomore. Stan was from France, had a full ride to Arizona State. There were just a bunch of kids. And, if I wasn't busy fitting, I was playing with the kids. Mm-hmm. Hey, you got your new irons? Don't even bother hitting balls on the range. We're going to go out on the golf course because you know how far you hit your old stuff. And if we have to tweak them, we'll tweak them. And that was the cool part about that. And then when Bubba and Alex would come in, they quit going to country clubs.
They just come out the Academy.
They'd come out there because they needed certain players. They needed certain speeds. Like one time they came out, they needed kids with speed hitting 3-irons because I forget what ball it was they were testing. So grab Rushton, grab Chang, grab Aaron, grab Mickey Wierenski.
Who was the kid that was he was the youngest at 15 ever qualified?
Brent Rogers.
Brent Rogers.
Oh, that was stupid.
Talk about speed. What was his ball speed? Was it 3-wood?
It was 191 with a 42-inch 3-wood. 42-inch, 12-degree 3-wood TaylorMade made him. He was hitting 2-iron 290. That's carry. That's not roll.
What was his ball speed with a driver?
When he brought he practiced, for a few hours, not a few hours, at the end of the day, because he was a post-grad, so he had his own car. He would come out and get on TrackMan, and the range at Pinecrest. Mm-hmm. He flew the trees at the back of the range into the high school parking lot.
Did he crack 200 ball speed?
Yeah.
And they're making a big deal about it with Bryson, but this kid was 15 years old breaking the 200.
At the time, Brent was 18.
Okay.
But still, 18 years old.
He hasn't hit his full development yet.
No, and not only that, this was, what, 6 years ago? 7 years ago?
Different faces.
Different face.
Everything wasn't as pushing the limits of the COR quite yet, and it was higher spin too. So for that kid to get that kind of speed off the drivers of, 2006 and 7, and by 2010 to 12, the face technology, I think those were the years really took a massive jump.
Yeah, Brent was there. Let's see, I started there in 2010, I think I started there. So he was there about 3 years later, and it was scary.
I don't even think. Well, Barsky told me I don't even think he's playing golf really anymore.
No, he isn't.
That's a shame.
Because his father knew Mike really well. His father's the only distributor of Fine One in the country.
It still amazes me that the Fine One has not taken off. I know that in large part because they don't have the financing behind it to get it out anywhere. But
they don't. Well, that new shaft too, I think I told you about. I was at one of my accounts in North Carolina this past weekend, and I ended up picking one up. Don't ask me why, but it's an $800 shaft.
Yeah, and the Fine One it's the first step, the only step graphite that I know of in the world, and it's retails $300. It's like, how is this shaft?
But
not
Bryant
everywhere?
knows all about Fine One. This Autoflex shaft that was out of Korea also. So he put one together for me, and it's 50 grams, and it's as whippy as can be. But as you start down, that thing doesn't move.
No, the energy transfer, whatever they've done.
It's the damnedest thing I've ever hit. And, I ended up calling a buddy of mine, and I'm like, you need to get this shaft. One of the members at Secession, he's like, I've been looking for it. He's like, give me one. he forked out $900 right there.
As far as fitting, because you did that for a long time, what were the some of the leading criteria that you would use? Because if you go to Joe Schmo Fitter, and this is not knocking on somebody who might have took a class and learned, and now they're doing it at a retail shop, but I mean, you did it that solely for that, and you had access to some of the best people in the country to pick their brains. The various manufacturers, the shaft companies, their R&D departments, Obarski, the savant of club fitting.
Well, and then the stuff I learned from him was
it's beyond next level.
Right.
And I hope to get his ass on the show soon, but what was your opinion of the leading criteria when you get somebody in there for a fitting that you're going on? Let's say your top three things.
One was to see what's wrong. Half the time the clubs are too upright. Mm-hmm. Always. And then, most people think, oh, the club's too upright, it's going to go left. Well, no, it's not, because a better player is going to hold it off and blow it right.
Right. Especially now they're going to swing steeper. They get steeper, they can't flatten the shaft in transition.
They can't, sure. So one was always just, with the better players at the academy or just in general?
Either or.
Kids at the academy, it was easy for me at the academy because I always knew what they were working on. So if Ross Procker brought over Aaron, and Aaron was always fit right, he was always fit right, but the hard part with kids is you don't know when they're going to hit that spurt. Mm-hmm. I mean, I remember fitting one of the kids right before Christmas, and then 3 months later, he grows 4 inches, and his speed.
What do you do with the parents when they just drop
$1,500? Parents went nuts, and I just told them, I'm like, look, I can't. So with kids anymore, especially, because we started fitting. I was in Atlanta and fit a young kid, and you almost have to go a half flex stiffer and say swing away. Mm-hmm. He's gonna grow into it. The lie can be tweaked, but you can get close. And the one thing, interestingly, is watching people, and I saw this a lot, was, shallow swingers do not need a wide-soled golf club. Mm-mm. It's going to screw them up. It's almost like giving, you've always been shallow and giving you a high bounce wedge. You're just going to skid into the ball every time. So, you can always tell the guys who are shallow and the guys who are steep. Someone who's steep needs some more meat in the club. Better players, there's ways around it. I always look, what's the miss? Speed's going to dictate everything. I remember listening to your podcast with Bubba. He's like, once you fit someone with a driver, you don't need TrackMan to fit them for irons. He's absolutely right. Because whatever they're in their driver, you just eliminated you got them figured down to 3 shafts for their irons. Mm-hmm. They're done. Here you go. Here's your 3 options.
So speed would be obviously a high ranking.
Speed's probably number one. I mean, you can't take a guy who's swinging a 7-iron 100 miles an hour. Well, you got 3 options in shaft, and that's it. If we give you anything weaker, you're all over the map. I'd say speed, better players, you always want to look at divot pattern,
Load profile.
load profile, and just better players will always tell you, here's what I want. I don't want the ball going left. I don't want this. I don't want, okay, well, if someone doesn't want the ball going left, they don't need a lot of offset. Offset's just going to square it up. You're going to hit it further left. Once you get their speed and get their tendencies, everything else, I'm not, not to sound arrogant, you're pretty much done. Grip size is another big one. Grip's too small, club's going to shut coming down.
Yeah, I think too many people that don't have the experience yet always are going to go, well, speed's always going to be there, but they're going off simply launch and spin too much. And we've had enough conversations about, particular shaft. If you get, all right, Steve Stricker's the shining example. If you go back to Stricker when he was really in his heyday on the tour, a good iron player and a phenomenal wedge player as he was, and he had the rifle shaft that had a really soft tip.
Right.
And then they stick him in a completely opposite shaft in his hybrids and his driver.
Right.
And he had the tendency to miss big with the driver, and his driver and his woods were never at the level that his irons were. And it's like, okay, you have him in the completely wrong shaft in order to match spin rate on a machine.
Well, the other one, look at Mickelson. Mickelson played Project X forever. He switches, goes to KBS. They made him a prototype, 125 grand prototype, and he starts winning everything.
Mm-hmm.
Starts winning.
He wins the British Open. Wins the British. Never win.
Yeah, wins the British.
And I'm not saying I'm a genius or by any means are able to predict the future, but I said when he dropped the Project X, and this is not against Project X, it's just that the guys fitting him didn't know how to fit per the shaft, only more off the numbers. When he switched those shafts, I said Mickelson is going to do well in the British Open.
Project X always felt harsh to me. I never really liked them.
It was so rigid, the top 3/4 of the shaft.
Yeah, the one that really did well, was the PXI. I fit a ton of people in the PXI, and then that was the precursor to the LZ.
Yeah, well, the PXI was when True Temper took over.
Right.
They bought out Rifle, and then they equalized the amount of play throughout the shaft. Correct. They took it out of the top 3/4 and put it into the bottom some. So, and you as your load, you have such a long lag. You would have never liked the Project X or any of the Rifle shafts.
No, I never did. I mean, the one I liked was PXI. Look at Rory. Rory doesn't like playing in wind.
Yeah,
he's got 7.0 Project X.
And part of the reason I contend to this day that he struggles with his wedge game.
Yeah,
you can't you can't get like that and have it that far out. You can't take a world-class player and say we can't hit his wedges. Not a guy that can split the driver at 330 yards down the middle and drive it up a gnat's ass.
And I mean, if you look at guys on tour, 80% of those guys are True Temper.
Mm-hmm.
Tried and true, right? Irons, wedges, reason why.
More. Do you think that more facilities should have fittings, or offer them, or have a on-site staff person, or should they? Because you can really, we used to always say custom fit or custom fucked,
right? And
the latter is what most people are getting. So should it be centralized to or specialized to certain places that can really do it, or should more clubs invest in the time and the resources to develop it? Like Belfair, Rob obviously saw that in you, and since you lived it and you've seen what to do and what not to do, how do you think clubs nowadays should go about that?
Well, everyone wants to have a fitter on site. Custom fitting. When I started it was sort of it was starting to get popular. It wasn't really there yet, but over the last 10 years, everyone has a fitter.
Mm-hmm.
Now, are they good? I don't know. They all dabble, I'll say. Some of the places where we send fitting components to is I have to trust those guys to sell it, to fit it, knowing it'll get done right. Sea Island's one of those places. Kiowa, Rusty at Kiowa's a good guy, good fitter. Jaron up at Golf Club of Georgia, really good fitter. We're not just going to send components they sell, because if something's wrong, Well, can you guys fix this? No. That's why we want to do it. There's a lot of good fitters. I mean, but now you don't see people just going in the store anymore saying, hey, I want that ping driver. They're getting fit for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're going to spend $500
You're spending $500, and especially if you're getting a exotic shaft that's another $3.
Mm-hmm.
Well, are you going to just take a chance and spend $800 and not have it work?
Right.
No, not at all. So it's, one of the best lines I ever heard. When I was with Titleist, I was out in Carlsbad, and I remember I got to work with Bob Vokey for a while, and I was having an issue with a lob wedge. And he's like, "What's going on, young man?" And I had a wide sole K. You remember that tour head I had? And I loved it from 90 yards and in, but I hated it out of the bunker. And Chris Tootin, who's the head of the tour department at Titleist, I ran into him, not to beat off subject, but he's like, go to the M grind. Okay. Loved it out of the bunker, hated it out of the fairway. So I'm sitting there with Bob Vokey, and we're going through all this, and he's like, well, you need this grind. And I'm like, that's a prototype. I can't get that. He's like, we'll figure something out, and just leaves. And then he came back, and he had a fitting. And it was a lady, probably 40 years old. Still to this day, I say this to everyone. She's like, oh, Bob, I'm not good enough to get fit. And he's like, you're not good enough to not get fit. And I'm standing there, and I chuckled. And he's like, well, reason being, he goes, if I hand you this young man's wedge, you can't hit it. He goes, if I hand him your wedge, he can make it work. He goes, he's just a more advanced golfer. And I tell everyone that. And the other one is, would you run a marathon with a shoe that's 2 sizes too small?
Right.
Right? No. So anymore, you need to. I mean, the resources are there for people, and there's enough good fitters out there where they're going to get really close. I mean, if I took Craig Allen at Sea Island and I took Rusty Mazzell at Kiowa and myself, and we all fit the same person, I'm 99% sure we're all going to be somewhat close in what we decide on that player.
Yeah, because it is, the numbers are, physics doesn't change in that instance.
Not at all. And it's just, all the shaft is a timing mechanism. I hate hearing the phrase that, oh, the shaft's the engine of the golf club. Well, bullshit, because if the shaft comes out of the golf club, golfer can't hold on. The golfer is the engine, right? He's the one pulling it back. He's the one turning, swinging. The other one I hate too is, oh, I got to slow my tempo down. Why? Swing it. Well, if I swing it, it goes all over. Then you're in the wrong shaft.
You're in the wrong shaft. You're overpowering it most likely.
Yeah, or it's too stiff, and so swing. I mean, I hate hearing that shit. We had a guy at the store one day. This is right when we open. Comes in, Marine, tall, lanky, swinging. And dude's swinging 7-iron like 103. It's like, Jesus Christ, I swing my driver 103. And he's like, yeah, it's all over the place. And I look, and he's in like Nippon 950 reg, like light, designed to get the ball in the air. I'm like, here, hit this. And he picks up 30 yards. He's like, oh, I'm done, buy him. He's like, what'd you do? I'm like, here's your speed. You got to swing 80 miles an hour to make this shaft work. He's like, I didn't know. I just picked these clubs up for like $100. And he's like, I've never been fit before. He's like, this is the greatest thing in the world. And then to see that, to know you can help someone and improve their game, it's a great feeling.
Yeah, and especially picking up that type of yardage.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you see some of the issues with club fitting nowadays?
Lie boards. Awful. They lie, right?
Yeah, I don't even know why they keep making those things.
Lie boards. It's, you have someone who's over the top and, it marks on the toe. Well, if we bend this 4 degrees upright, that's going to be in the middle. Really? I mean, I remember that same time out at Titleist, they're huge proponents of them. And I was fitting a guy for irons, and they're watching, and they're like, well, where's the lie board? I'm like, what do you need a lie board for? You got spin access on TrackMan, and you got swing plane. And they look at me, and they're like, well, why would you have swing plane up? Well, for me, swing plane, 60 degrees is sort of my barometer of where lie angle is going to be. If someone's swinging at 60 consistently, they're going to be standard. If someone's swinging at 58, 59, you got to go a little flat. Now, if someone's swinging at 74, it's time to get a lesson, right? Because that shaft stood up. They're coming out of it, and God knows what else. But, that's all. And they're like, well, and it's like I discovered something new. And it's just like, okay. And I won't get into names, but there's a couple guys at Titleist we just didn't. I still think to this day that's part of the reason I'm not with them.
It could be. I mean,
which is fine. I got no issue.
Some of the guys they had that did their seminars here. I remember the story that the one fella came in and how they didn't know this. And I'll tell this story from my end. We're at this seminar and this guy evidently helped Titleist put together their fitting program.
It was at Belfair.
Yes, and this one was at Berkeley. I think this was the first one.
Same guy though.
Yeah, and he says, well, you're not going to hit a longer driver any further than you're going to hit a shorter driver. And I said, hang on a second. And he said, we spent millions of dollars doing these studies on this. And I said, stop a second. Did you change the loss on the drivers? Well, no. Why would we do that? I said, well, okay, there's your first problem. Because you're much more shallow on a 47-inch driver than you are on a 44-inch. Well, what's that have to do? I said, your launch conditions change. What do you mean? What does it have to do with it? So no, if you're hitting a 47-inch driver at 11 degrees and a 44, they're going to have completely different parameters. And no, they're not going to go as long. And there's this long pause. But then the other guy came out, and he's fitting that one kid from Colleton using the lie board. And the kid's hitting a draw.
Yeah.
And he makes it more upright.
Yeah, I know.
I'm like, you got to be shitting me. And these guys are running their fitting department.
It's funny. I remember the first time when
that's not a knock on Titleist. That's a knock on those guys. For
absolutely. I remember when I first started, Peter Harris was heading that program for Titleist. And they came out to Belfair. We had the seminar, and he's like, I'm going to fit you. I'm like, okay. And Pete, do you remember Peter? We ended up playing. He talked like this and
vaguely.
So I remember Peter's like, go grab your club. And I had those burner tours. And I don't know who got a hold of them, but Peter's like, Jesus Christ. I'm like, what? He's like, hit a ball. He's like, look where you're fucking aimed. I'm like, where am I aimed? He's like, in the fucking hill. He's like, give me that. Hit this. I was a 1/2 inch long 2 up. I don't know who did it. And he put me in a 1/2 inch long 2 flat. And changed my world. And then obviously meeting Obarski was a whole nother thing. But That's a whole nother discussion for a later time. But that opened my eye. Well, and that just goes to show, like I said earlier, when clubs are too upright, you can't swing free.
Mm-mm.
You're losing speed, and then you can't control the face, and you don't know where it's going.
No, you're holding. I mean, there's so many things that it causes that are just troublesome in the swing, and then these people come in and say, oh, well, you check out, here's where you hit it on the live board. It's like, okay, you don't get a seat at the table of how to fix somebody's swing if you're telling me the live board is a viable and top 3 criteria for fitting somebody for their irons.
No, and where I think it screws a lot of people up, and I saw this with kids, is their wedges.
Mm-hmm.
Because now they're putting the same swing on a wedge, and they can't control their distance.
Do you see some of the big box stores as the industry is evolving, changing? Do you see some of them as squeezing out some of the smaller retail shops?
Yes and no. I take someone like Chip Usher.
Mm-hmm.
Chip's not going anywhere.
No, neither is David. What's his name?
David Ayers.
David Ayers.
And that's he's one. David did me a massive, massive favor. He was a wholesale account where he could be making $1 gazillion off our product, and he switched from me and went to Greengrass to help me. And love David. But again, David's got a bunch of good fitters in there. A bunch. And then, of course, he's got Joe Stevens. JoJo Dancer. And I love those guys.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very good. I look at someone like Chip. I went and saw Chip not too long ago, and when COVID hit, I don't know if I told you this, Chip's probably one of the top 5 Mira dealers in America. Chip ended up buying 28,000 heads from Mira in March. I saw him probably December. He had 800 left.
It's amazing.
But Chip knows what he's doing. Chip's very well respected. He's one of the biggest Fujikura dealers in America. But Chip knows what he's doing. And you create a business like that, I mean, he's honest. He knows his shit. And you're going to get a lot of repeat customers. And I'm lucky in that sense when I fit people. I always tried explaining stuff to them. And, you know, one of the fitters in the store, that's what we worked on with him. Because he's somewhat quiet, timid. And I told him, I go, look, if you can explain why you're taking him from A to B and show him and just articulate the differences, he's in. And that's all, you know, they want to feel comfortable. They want to feel they're getting their money's worth.
Yeah, know your shit.
Know your shit, exactly.
Don't read the latest issue of a golf magazine and say, "Oh, now I got ammo to go." It used to drive me crazy about teaching. Is some assistants would they read golf magazine or digest, whatever. I'm not going to throw any of those guys under the bus. That they would read the latest article and say, "Oh, now I got some ammo to go use in the clinic today." It's like, why don't you go actually do some research?
Because it's funny. I want that store to I want it to be more of a farm system. Get those guys in, get them really good, and they're getting way better, and they're good, but then get them in a van, and then bring the next wave in, teach those guys. But you got to want to do it. That's the whole thing. The guys we have in there, the one young kid is just all about it. And I mean, I remember being that way. I knew, oh, you see this new shaft, I'd call Showman, hey, send it to me. He's like, it's not going to work. I'm like, I just want to try it. Oh, okay. And it didn't work.
The learning curve of being young and in the golf industry, you it's your dream to be around golf. You got the passion for it, or you fell in love with it.
Well, the biggest thing too, now you have access to this stuff where, okay, hey, this has worked, I always loved the original Blue Board Diamana. Just always worked. So, all right, what do I find comparable? And it worked, so stick with it.
Speaking of being young in the industry, what was the story about you at picking the range at Old South?
So it was I moved down here in February of 2000. So it wasn't until the second year, because I didn't really, you knew all the guys there. I was welcome because I was your brother. So the second year, though, I think we had just moved to Old South. Mm-hmm. So we're at the Heritage, and if anyone has ever been, it's just a massive cocktail party. So we go out, and I'll make this short. We're at the quarter deck, closes down around 2 a.m. We're not ready to go home. Well, Joe Patterson and I had to open the next day at 6. So let's go to Moneypenny's.
Oh, God.
So we're at Moneypenny's. We don't even know. We look down. It's like 5:18. It's like, shit. So Joe's like, come on, I got to swing. And Joe was living where'd you and Chuck live?
Marsh Point.
Joe was living there. He swings in change. He's like, come on, I'll drive you home change. So get there. So Joe and I open the bag drop. Well, we flipped the coin to see who'd pick the range. Now, 99% sure we're still hammered. I'm passing out in the range picker, and I just hear a boom and wake me up, and I'm driving. This goes on for about an hour.
You're picking a range for an hour?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's slammed, right? We double teed from 7:30 to 10:30. And
oh, so you had the quiet time.
Had the quiet times when we picked the range. So unload. I'm not even aware of what's going on. Unload the range picker. I'm washing balls, and Johnny Cooler, the superintendent, comes fucking screaming in the cart barn. What in the fuck did you do? I'm like, fuck you talking about? He's like, you're in over every goddamn pin. Now I got to cement them in. It's like, oh, shit. And I go out there. All the pins are on the ground.
So you kept passing out
I was passed out
until you ran into a flag and
I
knocked
woke
it over,
up.
and then you'd
yeah,
wake up.
I think I ran. I don't know if I ran. I know I ran over it 4 of the 5. And it was cool because we had the early shift. So went home, went to bed, and then went to the quarterdeck then. Welcome to Hilton Head.
Right. Welcome to the heritage on Hilton Head.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you get to play much anymore? I mean, most everyone gets in the game because they like to play, but as you progress, you get less and less time.
I went from playing, before I took the job with PXG, I was playing minimally 3 days a week. That first year, I think I played 15 times. Second year, I played twice.
Mm.
Last year, it sucked too, because I'll tell you a quick story. First time I get a call from a guy at Cap City saying, hey, I played with a member from Augusta. He took me to Augusta, hit my driver, liked it. I want to buy him one. Okay. Go to Cap City. Guy comes walking up, and it's Terry McGurk, chairman of the Braves. Introduced myself, Mr. McGurk, met you a lot at Sea Island during the Pro-Am. He's like, oh, of course. He's like, when did you start? Blah, blah, blah. Fit him for a driver. I go, this is a gift from so-and-so. He's like, oh, that's great. He's like, he goes, I can't just have one PXG club. Fit me for the rest. Oh, okay. Fit him for everything, get done. He's like, have you been to the new SunTrust Stadium? No. Give me your email. I'm going to send you a ticket. I didn't know the ticket was his suite. Sitting in his suite.
How sweet was that? Speaking of sweet.
Crazy. He's like, food everywhere, booze, wine, liquor. He's like, if there's nothing here you want, let me know. I'll have it made. Oh, okay. Of course, I'm eating a hot dog and a Snickers. Don Perno comes walking in. Head pro director of golf at Peachtree. He's sitting there staring at me, and he's like, I know you. And tell him, of course. So he's like, look, our range is closed, but when we open, come on out. I'll have a bunch of guys for you to fit. He goes, in the meantime, if you ever want to come play, just give me a shout. Will do. Well, you're so busy. So go back, fit his guys. He's like, you want to go play? By all means, get on a cart and go. Don, I got to go here. So this goes on for a while. Finally, Don comes up to me. I'm there one day, and he goes, last fucking chance. And I'm like, shit.
And for anyone that doesn't know, Peachtree is one of the best clubs in the country.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you talk to the half of that membership or members at ANGC, Augusta National, and they'll tell you they like Peachtree better. So Don's like, you got one more chance. I'm like, I'm off tomorrow. He's like, first tee time. I'll be here. Play. Don's like, go in the locker or go in the restaurant, eat whatever you want. And so, I've done that now. I've had all these accounts ask and ask and ask. And so my other goal this year, other than building the territory, is, to take these guys up, because they're, the one I still have to get to is a Hoopy match club. Mm-hmm. The owners now invited me 5 times, and I've had to turn them down. So that's the next one, and that's my goal. Not only that, I can take, play golf with these guys, take them to dinner, and just, build that relationship, and it's Congaree. I went out there. That's another one that's just, I need to get you out there. It's absolutely phenomenal.
With trends in golf right now and what's going on with the ball study and the distance debate, do you see the industry getting a rollback as you work for a manufacturer rep, or do you see the tech continuing to push the game to a new level?
It'll push it. I mean, one of the things, when they talk about distance and, we need to roll the ball back, or look at green. I'm listening to your podcast with Tim. Fairways back then, the fairways now are as hard as a street. Mm-hmm. So when you see these guys, and it's complete bullshit, they're not carrying it 340. from a number standpoint, from a ball speed standpoint, it doesn't add up. If your ball speed's 181, you're not carrying it 340.
No, and they don't tell you what on TV what tees they're playing, because they're not playing the same. They're not playing the back, the extreme back tees every round for people that haven't been to the tour level. That they're not taking. They're usually doing those in a dog leg where these guys and girls are not
taking it over
trees and they're cutting a corner. But the way that they're measuring it and promoting on TV is they're going down the middle of the fairway to the dog leg and then they're cutting across. And obviously the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line.
Straight line, sure. I mean, I think you and I were watching that Open at Chambers Bay, I think, and Jason Day hit that drive, and they said to carry the bunker was 285, and he carried it by 5 yards. Mm-hmm. Now, are they carrying it 290? Yeah.
Right.
They are. But if you look at it from a standpoint, and I've been on TrackMan now for 15 years, 180 ball speed is not 330 carry. Mm-mm. It's 290, 295 maybe. Because I seen, one of the longest hitters in the world. And I saw what his ball speed was, and I saw what his carry was. We had it all saved on TrackMan, on reports for him, and that's legit.
Yeah, and when Rory or Bryson or DJ Brooks and all those guys, they want to step on one. Yeah, they can probably get to that 320 carry, maybe depending on the circumstances, right?
Sure.
But when they're playing at round 1, 2, or 3, and they're going at their normal speed, or even let's say amp it up one level, they're not going 330.
No,
it's not happening.
And to your point, I remember one year at the Heritage, Adam Scott was on number 8. And they had to tease. They weren't all the way back, because all the way back, it's what, 460?
480 something. 480? They're 480 or 90
480.
now.
They were one up, and I think he hit like 2-iron, 8-iron.
Right.
And they're like, whoa, 480, 2-iron, 8-iron. Well, no, because they played it at 440.
And I never knew that till I came down here and worked, and Billy Sampson took me to Harbortown the first week I worked here, and we're playing, and I said, man, that's a long hole to play back there every day. He said, they don't play there every day.
No.
I mean, that was a shock to me. I was just a 19-year-old kid.
No, not the other one I remember vividly. I was sitting in the pro shop at Chichessie Creek when they had, what they have at Quail, the PGA?
Yeah, when Rory was hitting 3-wood.
Remember when they had TrackMan out on the range? Mm-hmm. If you've ever been to Quail, that range goes dead downhill. Right. So wherever you move the cursor on TrackMan, and then the other thing is how you have the settings, sea level, humidity, but Rory's carrying it 365. No, he's not.
He ain't.
No. And then, you go out, he's on the course and he's hitting it 350. Well, he was just carrying it 365 on the range. What happened in 2 hours? So, I don't think so. I mean, people want to have fun. And if they can hit it longer, they're going to have more fun.
Yeah, it's something that they want to talk about when they get done with the round.
Yeah, I mean, if they can hit it, I mean, I look at now, the best I ever played was probably the mid-2000s when I was at Belfair. I mean, and I remember you got pissed because I started hitting it past you on a few holes. And I'm hitting it the same distance now. Now, granted, my irons are stronger. Mm-hmm. They're not a lot, but I could never play an iron that strong because it always dug, so I had to weaken them to have a little more bounce. But, I mean, it's more of the courses. I mean...
Yeah, the advancements in agronomy and no one even talks about that.
I watched Congaree, which is a course here by us. They don't have a maintenance budget. It's just one guy owns it, and he's a billionaire, and it's... Hands down, I remember the second time I played there, I'm hitting balls, and in front of me is Bob Ford. And, just hitting balls. And he's like, have you ever played here? I go, once. He's like, what do you think? I'm like, well, what do you think? Because you've played just about anywhere in the world. He goes, they can hold a major tomorrow. But they have a machine that literally scalps every inch of grass to the root. They do the entire golf course, fairway, collars, greens.
God, they turn that great place in the dirt.
And what happens, they told me, was the grass comes in fuller, thicker, tighter. So when we open, it's ready for a tournament. Adam Scott Adam Scott quarantined there for 3 weeks before the PGA and just loved it. So he joined. I remember Messier called me and he's like, have you ever played there? I go, yeah. He's like, I'm trying to join. So I sent John McNeely a note, who's the managing partner. And, you know, Mark has the charity up in, I think it's the Children's Tomorrow Fund he has that helps the hospital in Hackensack. And they put Mark on as an ambassador just because of the stuff they do with the kids. And that's what Congaree's based on.
What, any new tech that's coming out this year, since we're at the beginning of the year, that you can speak to without getting in trouble or ruining a launch?
We just launched a proto driver that was tour only last year, and we just launched the Woods. Gen 4 Woods are coming in April. Outside of that, I think irons are coming. I'm not sure. I know there's a new wood line and we'll have a new premium iron.
What are you most excited about this year going forward with PXG and the industry as an insider?
I think for me, it's just, you know, when HQ issues a challenge to me, it's just like, okay, then it's just figure out how to do it. You know, it's where I'm at now compared to where I was. You know, if they issued a challenge like that 18 years ago, fuck you. I ain't doing that. Find someone else. Now it's more of, okay, you know, and you know, one of the questions you ask, how do I keep my guys going? It's like, we can do this. You know, we lost our 2 best months last year. There's 10% we can make up, you know, because I figured I had slated we'd do $1 million in April last year, which is crazy, absolutely crazy. And with what's going on in Atlanta this year, you know, Atlanta has the All-Star game this year, and I've gotten to become pretty good friends with Andrew Jones, who played for the Braves. Ryan Howard lives there now, who played for the Phillies. Dan Ugla, who played.
What were Ryan's numbers?
When he swung stupid. You know, he'd just get up and hit, and it's like, you know, quit swinging like a pussy. And he looked at me, and I'm like, oh, shit. And it's like, uh-oh. And he's like, oh, it's all right, man. I got this. And then, like, he let loose on one, and it's like 123. Ugla swings at like 128. Ugla's smaller than me. Just good guys, though. So the All-Star game's there, so I'm trying to get, something with those guys to get the players in the store. And because, I mean, money to those guys is, you know, Ryan hit 6 shots with me and spent $12,000.
Jeez.
Yeah. I mean, well, the dude had a $190 million contract, so $12,000 to him isn't a whole lot.
He pulled the roll out of it.
Yeah,
Yeah, the Mississippi
so
pimp roll he pulled out of his pocket.
He's just like, he threw his black card, and he's like, yeah, man, let's do it. And then he's like, man, any way I can get some gloves? I'm like, Ryan, I can get you some gloves. Be all right.
I'll throw that in. I'll hook you up.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's do some rapid fire, because I know
sure.
that your wife, we don't want her mad at you, and I
Yeah,
don't want her
right.
mad at me. We got 9 for the crazy back 9. We'll do emergency 9.
Let's go.
If you were in a Ryder Cup, your walk-up song would be what?
Ludicrous, move, bitch, get out the way.
That's the best one so far.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you could play one video game the rest of your life, what would it be?
One video game? Mm-hmm. Oh, shit, I don't know. Video game. Super Mario.
All right. You've played a number of them, but what was the best course you've ever played?
I'd say it's a tie between Peachtree and Lahinch in Ireland.
Hard to argue that one. Favorite sports movie?
Slapshot.
Let's see. Biggest celebrity name in your phone?
There's a couple. I mean, you want all of them?
No, just who would just...
It's a tie between Mess and Dan Marino.
That's 2 pretty good ones.
Yeah.
Favorite line from Caddyshack? –
Shit, I don't know. There's too many. There's too many. Come back to that one. I have to think about it.
If you weren't a golfing manufacturer rep,
Yeah.
you would have been a what?
Some type of rep. I like being around people.
Let's see, a couple more. If you could caddy for anyone on any tour, who would it be?
Tiger.
You deal with the craziness?
Yeah, that'd be cool. Just to watch it. I mean, it's
Be cool to be able to grab somebody's camera and throw it in the water.
yeah, like Stevie or spit on someone. No, or kick him. No, I mean just to like watch him hit balls. A quick story. I was couple of the members from Belfair I know really well moved down, and I forget where was he? Nona or Isleworth?
Isleworth.
Is it Isleworth?
Yeah.
So John and Meredith moved down to Isleworth, and they're playing with a member, and all of a sudden a cart pulls up and like, mind if we play with you? Or mind if I play with you? And John's like, Meredith's like, it's Tiger. And Tiger had his own tees, and they quit playing and just watched them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, it was stupid. Like the sound of the ball coming off the club was just absolutely insane.
Yeah,
So,
it's a little different.
yeah. So, I mean, even if it was 3 holes, I'd be like, fuck, this is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, another side story real quick. We went to Augusta one year, and I had to go to the back gate. Remember Larry Tedesco?
Mm-hmm.
He got
when
me
his son was
the assistant, so he got me a ticket, and I had to go to the back gate, and we were there early. I think we were there at like 6:45, and I caught Tiger on 17 in, and it was just
when there's nobody there.
There's no one there.
He used to go out so early.
Yeah, it was him and O'Meara, and then you started to see people come down 18th fairway, and then it's like, all right, fuck it, I'll go find you guys and grab a beer.
Mm-hmm.
But it was pretty cool.
Well, speaking of Tiger, your opinion, greatest of all time?
Greatest winner, Jack. Greatest player, Tiger.
Yeah, it's fair. I mean, I tell people not to interject my own opinion. It's the story's not over yet because Tiger's not done per se. I mean, he just had that.
I didn't realize he just had another back surgery.
Yeah,
it's. I mean, I haven't been around him, like seen him. I saw him at the Heritage that year he came. Obviously, Augusta, you couldn't get to him. Never saw Jack play.
But Tiger definitely had the best golf by far for the stretch that he was in. Jack has the record for majors. Tiger's got him in wins, but like I said, Tiger's not done yet.
It was funny though, listening to your podcast with George Goyich, and that was very interesting what he said.
Yeah, he was the only one that said neither.
Yeah, what did he say, Hogan?
I think Hogan.
Yeah. And it was funny. There was a picture of Hogan. You see this? They had a picture of Hogan's carry yardages.
Yeah, I saw that on social media.
Like pitching wedge was 115.
Right.
9-iron was like 128. And now 128, these guys are hitting
lob wedge
or 54, and it's insane. It's cool watching from an equipment standpoint. I mean, I remember one of the members at Great Oaks gave me a Great Big Bertha when it came out, and I'm like, fucking thing is massive. And I saw one.
Now those are like 3 woods.
I saw one. Yeah, I was up at my club makers, an account of ours up in Shelby, North Carolina. We stopped in to see him, and he had one, and it's literally a 3-wood. I mean, I remember I had I
still got the McGregor's and the whole five screw Hogan and the Joe Powell in my office right there, and you put those down. Holy shit!
I remember the first graphite driver I had was a TaylorMade burner
with the bubble shaft.
Bubble shaft, yeah. And where it's come now, the tech involved in it is just crazy. It's more so, too. Look at those guys had 2 options in shafts back then. Not even one, just different flexes.
Yes, it's come a long ways.
Yeah, and so, I mean, you see the shit they're throwing in shafts today, and it's just like, you got carbon weave, you got this, that, and it's just like, I can't keep up anymore. I used to be up on all the shafts, and there's too many. My day-to-day now, I just don't have time.
Well, it's like anything else. It's advancing so fast that unless you're in it every single day right now, that you're getting. If you're out of it for a year, you're
out of it for a year. You're way behind. It's And I mean, everyone's coming. Now it seems to be going lighter and stiffer.
Mm-hmm.
Where back then, you know, I remember one of my Titleist drivers, I had like a 78 gram purple ice shaft.
Oh, the purple ice.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Fuck, I love that thing. And then I remember the 905R I had a speeder 757.
Mm-hmm. That shaft matched up with your swing load value.
I remember I was told to cut it down to 44.5 inches and I'll hit it 15 yards further. And I remember playing with Mickey, Colella, Kent, and Paul Grizz, and I'm all over the map. And I call Obarski, and I'm like, this is fucking shit. You just ruined a $380 shaft. He's like, call your brother. Call you. You're like, move a little closer.
Boom.
Boom. Change world. So it's cool to see where golf's going. I mean, there's way more people gravitating toward it now than, you know, when I was younger, I didn't want to play. You know, I was basketball, whatever else. And I wish I would have started younger.
Yeah, well, back then, no one did anything specialized.
No one did it. Yeah, exactly. So, but it's cool to see where I want to see where it is in like 5 years, especially, you know, is the golf ball going further? Yeah. But also, you know, talking to guys, and you know this, these guys are specifically training for their craft.
Yeah, they're cracking the code. But and like Como said, you know, if you use Bryson as the model, Como told him, because I heard him say it, that there was a risk that it could go the wrong way.
Sure.
He said that, you know, and he didn't validate the changes that were made that Bryson wanted to do, but in speaking to what the work that they did, he said, when someone said, well, you know, he could have lost his whole game, he's like, okay, you hear about some players who tried to make changes and did lose their game. But you don't hear about the players who really needed to make changes, and then it saved their career because maybe they didn't go on to be major winners or multiple winners, but they were journey pros, but they stayed on the PGA Tour for careers. You don't hear about those changes.
Well, and when people bash Bryson too, because I sort of have a inside look at what he's doing with Ben, it's not like that's an easy change.
Mm-mm.
I mean, you're going to retool all this? And then he didn't come out of the top 8 for 7 weeks and then wins the U.S. Open. And, I mean, Justin Thomas said it best. He's like, well, you still have to make putts.
Right.
And the dude putted the lights out.
Mm-hmm. Now
you're seeing Rory 46.5, Phil 47. You're seeing all these guys dabble.
Which is crazy because Bryson didn't put the 46 inch in play.
No, he didn't put the 47-inch in play.
Yeah, he dabbled with it at the practice rounds in November at Augusta. But
yeah, I saw a video of Showman was with him on the range, and they had 3 shafts and like 9 heads.
Mm-hmm.
And Ben weighted the heads differently. And then Ben said it wasn't right, so he went back to 46 and.
Yeah, there's an art. I mean, Obarski was there when Edel was working with him in college, and the time they took to get the single length, the shafts and the head configuration right. It's a very unique model.
It was cool seeing the engineers at Cobra when they signed Bryson. I was on the van that year at Harbortown. And have you ever been in a Cobra van?
Yeah, we were there at Augusta.
At Augusta. You know, when you walk through the door, the loft line machine's right there. The engineers had to soup one up
to get it to his lie angle.
So they used a raw head or a blank head, and they got like a 10-inch dowel rod just to see. But Ben had to, at first, he had to bend them, torch it, bend it, and put it nice. And then they're like, fuck it, let's just make a mold.
Right, make it easy.
It's going to be more expensive, but it's one guy. And then, you know, they come out with the 1 lengths.
It'll be interesting this year. Hope all this crazy shit's over and they can start. Augusta will be in a normal time. Hopefully, the patrons.
Yeah, well, they're limiting it. It's funny because I had a meeting with them. I went into Augusta National beginning of March, and JJ Weaver, the head pro, and Robbie Bruns is the first assistant, and sat down with them, and we would give them 2 sets of clubs. Just give them to them. If anything sold, we'd invoice them. So I went in to pick the clubs up, and I'm, you know, do you guys want another couple sets? And JJ's like, honestly, no one's forgetting their clubs when they come to Augusta National. It's like, all right, fair, gotcha. So I'm like, offer, you know.
And they're not getting lost on the airline because they're not flying commercial.
No, they're not flying commercial. So, you know, we have a standing offer for Augusta, you know. If you ever want to bring a set in, use it. If it, you know, if someone buys something, awesome. If so, he's like, well, we'll revisit it. So, but when he said that, he had this smirk on his face. I'm like, yeah, I'm with you. I hear you.
All right, let's get out of here. Let's go have some bourbon. It's been great.
It.
Obviously, I had a front row seat to most of it, but
absolutely.
Good to finally have you on. We'll have to do another one with Hudak and Pence and get the whole local rep crew together and do a round table.
That would be an interesting one. I can give those guys a ton of shit.
We'll give them a ton of shit.
Yeah,
cool.
Exactly.
All right, we're out of here.
Thanks.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to today's show. If you enjoyed it, you can find more information on today's episode and other topics at golf360.blog. There you'll find the show notes and links related to this episode, as well as any other episode that we've done so far to date. If you're interested in improving your game and would like to learn more from yours truly by taking a private lesson, a half-day or multi-day school, club or putter fitting, you can reach me through the blog site or by email, pete@golf360.blog. So some of you may be asking, what is the golf paradigm? All you have to do is click on the homepage while on my blog site to discover how you can start playing better than you ever thought possible. Or you can simply sign up, again, on the blog page for my instructional videos where I give regular tips on all areas of the game to include the swing, club design and fitting, health, fitness and nutrition, the mental aspects, and equally as important, the integration of all those things together. I'm also on social media, and you can find me at The Golf Paradigm. That's PARADIGM, and I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, also under the same name, The Golf Paradigm. Facebook is usually the best way to reach me for questions and or comments, and I look forward to hearing what all of you have to say. This podcast is brought to you in part by Old South Golf Links. A short ride across a bridge from Hilton Head Island is one of the area's finest golf courses and a hidden treasure. Set up on towering pines and ancient oaks with sweeping marsh vistas, truly makes Old South Golf Links a one-of-a-kind golfing experience. The Clyde Johnson design was named one of the top 10 new public courses when it opened, and it also takes full advantage of the natural beauty of the Low Country. Old South is a fun and unique challenge for golfers of every skill level and a favorite of both locals and visitors. Whether it's your first time here or you're a regular, you'll be treated and feel like family. From the bag drop to check-in at the fully stocked pro shop with both men's and women's apparel, to breakfast or lunch before or after your round, the staff is always ready and willing to help. Experience for yourself why Old South is one of the premier golf courses in the Hilton Head area and why it will quickly become a favorite of yours too. Visit them in person or online at www.oldsouthgolf.com, or to make it tee time, simply call the pro shop at 843-785-5353.